Jim might be on iPhone.
Michael, we are live on YouTube.
Great, thank you, Sean. All right, welcome everybody to tonight's Design Review Board November 15th meeting. I'm just making sure we got all of our members for a quorum here. We do have a quorum, but I believe there might be another member that we're just trying to locate real quick on Zoom here. And then we'll get started. Staff, do you guys see, is Jim or John on, or are we good to just get started with the 5 that I have?
I just saw iPhone come on.
It wasn't him.
Okay. Nope, don't see Jim. It's okay to get started.
All right, well, we'll get started. So I called a motion, or I called to adjourn the meet, or to start the meeting of November 15th, Design Review Board. Do I have a quorum? Do I hear a motion to approve tonight's agenda?
So moved.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All right, all those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Do we have any meeting minutes, staff, to approve?
We have October the 18th, October the 25th, and November the 8th.
All right, do I hear a motion to approve October 18th, October 25th, and November 8th meeting minutes?
So moved.
There's a motion. Do I hear a second?
Second.
All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, motion passes. All right, I'm looking for any general member comments that are not in reference to any applications that are on tonight. This is public forum, so any general member comments, just raise your hand. All right, I don't see any. So we will jump into tonight's agenda with application G, which is 2251 Double Eagle Court. I believe this is an appeal. So if we could get the appellant up. We have a couple appeals tonight, so I just want to walk through what the appeal process is, and then we'll get started. So for an appeal, the appellant needs to prove that there was a misapplied guideline or that there's new information that was not available during the original review of the application. So the appellant needs to prove one of those two things, and then us as a board will vote on it as accepting the appeal or denying the appeal. And if it's accepted, then we will hear the case de novo. And if the appeal is denied, then the motion that we already have and the ruling we already have stands. So just remember that you're looking to a misapplied guideline or providing new information. So is the appellant here for Double Eagle Court?
Yes, this is Kristen Soller, and I'm here for Colonial Green.
Great. Well, the floor is yours, so
Okay.
Please walk us through your appeal.
Sure. So I don't have any new information to provide. Our initial appeal for this particular situation, so the homeowner put in what is equivalent to a front patio in front of her house without running this by the board, running it by RA. So she, after the fact, came to you guys and put in the design review board application. Colonial Green does not allow privacy fences of any kind. And it was our understanding that RA required for front patios that that homeowners have some sort of privacy shield, or that it be what is it, trying to remember or visually integrated, which none of us were really sure what that means. But since we don't allow these privacy shields, and since we were not asked about the patio, our stance was that the patio doesn't fit with the overall look of the cluster. We've had other houses who have put in these front patios, and we've asked them to remove them, and they've been removed. So we were not sure why, if RA requires that front patios be enclosed, and we clearly in our guidelines state that we don't allow enclosures, why it was approved for this homeowner to have this front patio.
Okay, so you feel that a guideline was misapplied for front yard patios?
Correct. We
in
have a
that instance?
guideline that does not allow any sort of privacy enclosures. And according to RA, for a front patio to be acceptable, it would have to be fully enclosed.
Okay. And staff, can you correct me if I'm wrong, but the guideline that she's referencing, I believe that guideline is only saying that it needs, if it's in a fully enclosed yard and it's a front yard patio, it does not need an application. But it does not state that. Then farther down in the patio guidelines, it says that you can have, if it comes before the DRB, you could have a front yard patio without screening, for example.
That is correct. Initially, when this decision was revised to remove the fully enclosed patio reference, because it did not apply to this specific project.
Okay.
And there is no cluster standard stating that the front yard patio is prohibited.
Okay. So I'd like to ask Mike B and Elena, since you guys were on the original panel that approved this, what was your understanding of the RA guideline for front yard patios and making your decision?
I actually, Michael, if I may, I think LaShonda, you just kind of summed it up succinctly. So that was my understanding of what we were reviewing. Elena, I don't want to speak for you by any means, but
That's my understanding too. That was my understanding too. There's nothing stating in the guidelines that you have to enclose a front yard patio.
Okay.
and there was no specific cluster standard that we were flying in the face of. So,
Correct.
All right. So with that kind of thought, if we are kind of looking at this as an appeal, with whether it's a misapplied guideline or cluster standard, my understanding is that there's no cluster standard yet that prohibits this. From my understanding, and the guideline you guys understood, and I don't think it was misapplied in this instance. But does anybody else have a question for the appellant for this application? Sarah, do you have anything? Or
No items to add. Thank you.
okay. Elena, Mike B, we already heard from you. John, did you have anything to add?
No.
Okay. Brian, did you have anything to ask?
No, I don't have any questions.
Okay. So just a reminder, Elena and Mike B, you guys cannot vote on the appeal. Did Jim join us, staff? I just want to make sure I'm not forgetting about him.
I want to unmute an iPhone. That might be him. So I'm going to ask that call
Okay.
to unmute right now before I make them honest.
Okay. I just want to make sure I don't move on until.
Hey, guys.
Hey, Jim.
Hi, Jim.
So you have Jim present now as well.
Jim, do you have anything to add? Any questions for the appellant?
No, I don't.
Okay. Does anybody want to make a motion on the appeal?
I'll make a motion that we accept the patio as it's been designed without the screen.
All right. So just to clarify, you'll have to make a motion, John, to deny the appeal.
I move that we accept the patio as installed without the screen.
Yeah, John, just to clarify, this is, since we're on the appeal part of this, you would just have to motion to deny the appeal, would be what you'd be looking to do right now. If you want the patio to stay the way it is, that's the original decision letter, is the patio the way it is with no screening. And so right now the cluster is appealing that decision. So if you would feel like we don't have any new information or there's no misapplied guideline, then you would want to make a motion to deny the appeal, if that's what you're trying to do.
I would move that we deny the appeal.
All right, so there's a motion on the table.
Second.
We have a second. All right, is there any further discussion on that? All right, all those in favor of denying the appeal, say aye.
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 Aye. Any against? And then Mike B and Elena abstain. So the motion passes 5-0-2, I believe. All right, thank you. All right, moving on to application H, which is 11904 Moss Point Lane.
We do have,
And so staff, walk me through this one because there's 2 appeal requests and they're from 2 different parties.
correct,
Appealing the same motion, but for 2 different reasons.
that is correct. So we
So how
have
are we?
the
So-
appellant is appealing and then the applicant is appealing. So what would happen is the DRB would review the first appeal and make a decision on whether to accept or deny. If the first appeal is accepted, then the whole application will be reviewed de novo. But if the first appeal is denied, then you would go on to review the second appeal and make a decision on that.
Okay. All right. So who gets to go first? The homeowner, I'm assuming?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So do we have the appellant on the homeowner?
Judith Bond.
There's a Judith Loomis.
There is a Judith.
I'm going to ask them to unmute and confirm whether or not this is her turn to speak. Judith, you should have gotten a request to unmute.
Yeah, Judith Loomis is right here. This does not concern her.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Judith Bond? Judith
She-
Bond?
I don't see
She
another.
is not, she is not on.
All right. Well, what's protocol for this? Do we just go to the next appeal and hear
That is correct.
the next appeal?
Yes.
Okay. Is the appellant David Vanell and Sue Straits on?
Yes, we are.
And they do have their 3 minutes to make their statement.
Well, they're not an affected party, they're an appellant, so they get to state their case for their appeal. So just a reminder, you guys need to provide either new information or a misapplied guideline for the appeal request. And then if we accept it, we will hear the application over again. So if you want to walk us through your appeal for this application, and just a reminder, on the original panel was Bruce, who's not here, Jim, and Sarah. You guys will not be able to vote in the appeal, but you'll be able to participate in the discussion. All right, take it away. Whoever is speaking for you all.
Okay, thank you very much. The decision was misapplied in that information concerning the screening was left out in the final determination in the DRB decision letter, specifically the words shade tolerant evergreen were missing. Shade tolerant evergreens were missing. Also, there's a bit of new information regarding the need to remove pop-up trees. So you've got the letter that we included there. How much of that have you read, or do you want me to review it, read it out loud? How do you want to do that?
Well, so the new information that you're worried about, though, is just in the decision letter. There was some wording for the actual screening that was being required, which I believe the way the wording of the letter was, and I don't know if staff, if you can bring that up, is it says that the applicant needed to provide what that screening was going to be within 60 days to staff. And then staff would need to approve, they would basically be approving said screening. So staff, is that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
So your problem with the wording or your appeal is that the wording in the approval letter, so that little section there that says applicant must submit a plan to add additional screening within 60 days of the decision letter to RA staff. So this was October 4th. They have until basically December 4th. And RA, staff, I'm assuming you guys have not received any sort of screening plan as of now?
Not as of today.
I mean,
We have not.
sir, you're just looking for it to make sure that it says that it's evergreen. State what you wanted again, the evergreen.
I'm sorry, the statement about shade tolerant evergreens, which is what we had suggested be included in the decision, in the written DRB decision, was not there. It was kind of left open what type of screening bush would be used. And then the issue of removing the pop-up trees, I guess the pop-up trees that actually in item 3 of the document that you had on the screen before, was something that we think needs to be done as well. And I suspect that the current owner of the property, not sure why she's not here tonight, but I think she was concerned about what could be done to those trees before. Several years ago, we asked the former owner about removing or cutting back these pop-up trees, but nothing was ever done. And those, well, you had it, it was on the screen just a little bit ago. There you go.
So let me ask the people who were on the panel real quick to see if they had any kind of information on this stuff. So Sarah and I believe Jim, Bruce isn't here. Do you guys remember kind of when you guys made this decision? It wasn't too long ago, so I'm hoping you do. About the screening, and if by chance you guys did have, that you wanted to make sure that there was shade tolerant evergreens, or were you guys leaving it open? Was there any requirement for staff to make sure, verify, or kind of what was your thought process in that approval?
Jim, do you want to go ahead with what you recall?
I thought we were leaving it a little open for recommendations for what the shade tolerant evergreens would be.
But do you remember discussing specifically shade tolerant evergreen, and that maybe just got left out of the decision? Or, I mean, to me, adequate screening, vegetation screening, to me, implies that it's evergreen, right? I mean, that's whether it be a boxwood, a holly, or a skip laurel, or whatever it be. To me, screening, it's not screening if it's 6 months out of the year, it doesn't have any leaves on it, right? So to me, vegetative screening to me in turn is naturally evergreen. Whether it's shade tolerant, I mean, that's, we want to make sure obviously that whatever you're planting is going to live, but
yeah, Michael, I concur. And with the discussion that the challenge was we weren't going to be able to get the deck in line with the colors. So then the solution was, well, then provide the screening to the neighbor. And I think the general understanding was that the screening, just like what you were saying, is something that would be year round and not something that would be dropping the leaves. So that's only a couple months out of the year would they not have that view. That was the issue, was the view of the deck in the non-conforming color. So that was, I think we were leaving it open-ended on what they wanted to plant, but that wanted to give them time to develop to submit a planting plan.
That was going to be approvable by staff, basically, for that said screening. Okay.
Correct. Yeah, but we agree. My recollection is that the panel agreed unanimously that there was justification there for there to be screening from the neighbors for their view of the non-conforming colored deck.
Gotcha.
Michael and Sarah, if I could add, this is David Vanel again.
Yep.
If I could add, we were on that call, and Sarah's absolutely correct. We were on that call. We listened to everybody's comments, but for some reason, the person who was overseeing muted us and couldn't see that we were there. We weren't on a Zoom. We were on a phone call. And but we thank the three members of the committee for that night for obviously reading our concerns and coming up with the solution they did. We were just hopeful that the solution could be a bit more detailed.
Gotcha. Well, and I think that's what their hope was with the vegetation, with saying that they needed to submit what the actual screening plan would be. And you as an affected party would be notified kind of on what that, screening plan would be. To this date, it sounds like they still have not submitted anything. So, and obviously the applicant is not here tonight.
We sorry to interrupt. She is on.
Okay.
We're trying to unmute her now. Judith, if you're on a phone and you can hear us, you would press *6 to unmute yourself.
Does the DRB have questions for the applicant? Because procedurally, we want to finish with the affected.
Well, that's what I was going to ask next is, do we need to hear?
It's depending on whether
do we
you
continuance
accept or deny.
this appeal, or do we, pause this appeal to hear her appeal first?
You would continue this one.
Okay. I would like to ask the applicant a question, yes.
Okay, as stated before, Judith, if you are on a phone, you would push *6 to unmute yourself. We have sent you a request to unmute yourself as well.
I actually have Judith on the phone. I can put her on speaker to see if that would work. She's unable to unmute herself for whatever reason. Give me 1 second. Judith, can you hear us?
I can hear you, yes.
Okay, the DRB has some questions for you in reference to the appeal. Michael?
Hi, Judith. I just have a question. Have you prepared any sort of, the decision letter had a request to present to RA staff a landscape screening plan. Have you had time to consult with somebody to prepare that? Have you?
No. Okay. So when I just recently purchased a house, and a part of the contract was that all of the issues from the previous owner were going to be addressed before I actually bought the house. So she actually moved out of the house before everything was resolved, but she was still continuing to resolve these issues. So I'm actually surprised that I'm talking tonight. I thought she would be back on the call again. So I don't quite know how I should move forward because my realtor was helping me deal with this.
Michael, to give you some context, the homeowner is appealing based on a misapplied guideline for the actual requirement of the vegetation. So I don't believe their intent is to install vegetation as screening.
Okay, but our motion currently still states that they need to supply a plan to you within 60 days at the moment, correct?
Yes, the DRB decision is that, but the homeowner is appealing that decision for that reason.
Thank you, Cam. So I think what we need to do is, I think staff, from this motion, I don't think we need to open the whole can of worms again. I think internally, vegetation screening is evergreen in my, professional opinion, or else it's not really screening. So I would assume that any sort of plan that comes ahead would be evergreen in nature, and it would be, tolerant to whatever environment that it's being planted in. I don't know the sun or shade condition of this exact area, so I'm not going to weigh in on that. But I think staff, you guys have a good understanding of what a appropriate screening plant is considered. And so for that reason, for this appeal, I'm going to make a motion to deny the appeal on the grounds that there's no misapplied guidelines or any new information.
Second.
So there's a motion and a second. Any further discussion on that? All right, all those in favor of denying the appeal, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any against? And then Sarah and Jim abstain. So the motion passes 5-0-2. And then there's the appeal from the applicant that we need to hear. LaShonda, I mean, we're happy to hear what their case is. I guess now that they're on the phone, do they want to? I mean, she doesn't seem ready to present what her case is. Does that sound about right?
I do have her here.
Okay. Well, no, my position at the moment is that I recently purchased the house. The deck was an issue. I've restained the deck the color that was approved in the last meeting. So eventually I will get around to landscaping the back area, but at the moment that is not in my budget. So it's going to have to wait. But there is, at the moment, it's not uniform, but there is screening there on that side.
Okay. So what I would say is, okay, so once again, I don't know if there's any new information or a misapplied guideline for what the current ruling states. So I would make a motion once again to deny that appeal as well.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion on that appeal? All right, so all those in favor of that motion say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any
against? Any abstentions would be Sarah and Jim. All right, motion passes 5-0-2. And staff, just work with them on the screening plan. And obviously they don't need to plant in the middle of winter, but they just need to get you a plan that then has X amount of days to implement. So you guys know what you're doing. So I think an easy resolution can come of this. All right, moving on to application I, Vantage Hill condominium. This is also an appeal. This is an appeal by RA. And Cam, you know the drill, so take the floor, sir.
Sure. I'm just going to read what's written on the screen. The decision of the September 20th, 2022 full board meeting related to this application leaves the Resident Association Covenant staff to review and approve the HVAC units if the classification is not a cluster association. However, there must be a guideline established which enables staff to review such a request. And presently there is no design guideline which empowers staff to review HVAC units unless the property is a cluster association. So if you go to, I think, page 3 of the application, the highlighted text stipulates that deferred the decision related to the HVAC's units to allow the applicant the opportunity to further study and consult with Resident Association's legal counsel and or the Resident Association Board of Directors to determine the entity classification for the community association and to submit that final determination on entity classification to RA covenants within 30 days and permit staff to review and approve if the classification is not a cluster association. And so because there is no design guideline for HVACs for anything that is not classified as a cluster association or single family detached, we are not empowered or able to review such a request.
Since it's been 30 days since this approval letter, have they submitted a direction on what they are they're going to classify as?
We have not formally received a confirmation on what they will classify themselves as, but we have communicated Resident Association's position on being a cluster, having access to RELAC per the deed, or classifying themselves as another entity, which would negate their requirements to be a part of RELAC and have accessibility to HVAC units. I think that would be more a question for the applicant, if you want to ask.
Well, what I'm trying to figure out is because what you guys are just deferring the fact that our motion states, but our motion is a deferral. So my question is doesn't a deferral mean that it's going to end up being coming back to us anyways for final approval?
I don't think that that's the way the decision read. The decision read that we were deferring decision, and then staff could make the decision at a consulting level rather than coming to a panel. And I think that there's new information because when we voted on that motion, we did not understand that staff did not have the authority to approve the HVAC locations, if there were any. So I think, and I'm willing to discuss this, but I think it's not a matter of approving or disapproving the HVAC units. It's changing the language to say that it has to come back to either a panel or the full DRB for approval of HVAC units if they will be installed. Because we have not, you're right, we have not made a decision. We've deferred a decision, but our decision was to leave it to staff. So just changing that, saying it would come to panel or DRB.
Wow. Is legal, Tony, are you on?
Tony is on. I think he.
Michael Amo is on. How are you?
Good. How are you doing?
Oh,
quick question. So if we let's say there's a motion to accept this appeal, is there a way to just open the portion of the wording of the motion, or does we have to open up the whole application again?
so if you accept the appeal, it's de novo. And so you can do whatever you wish. Open the wording of the motion, or you can extract from the applicant some information that you might need and make a different motion.
Okay, and we have the applicant on tonight.
I would encourage this board to ask the applicant how exactly they plan to be organized. And if they can give you that information, I think it's a fairly simple motion.
All right, so is the applicant on that we can ask a question?
Yes, they are.
Hi, good evening. Lynn Strobel representing the applicant. I would also note that Robbie Malm is on from Craftmark, who may also want to comment on this. But I would just like to say that we did have several discussions with Mr. Champ as the Reston Association Council, and that on December 9th of this year, so just last week, there was a letter that was issued. It was a determination stating that the Reston Association does not consider condominium associations to be a cluster. And so we will organize the townhomes as a condominium. Therefore, it will not be a cluster. And therefore, I do not believe that there are any restrictions on individual air conditioning units, that they would be allowed and they can be approved. And I want to also reiterate, I do think that the statement was correct when we were here the last time. You know, it was said that the HVAC would be reviewed by staff and not have to come back to the DRB. We wouldn't have to be back here.
Okay. Staff, this condos, I believe, do have a HVAC guideline, correct?
No.
I feel like I reviewed that one application for those condos over behind North Point like a year ago. I thought there was a guideline that we were applying in that instance.
We have a design guideline for cluster associations and single family detached. there's not a specific guideline that establishes or in air conditioning units or HVACs. So the DRB has historically used their ability to establish a certain level of reasonableness to review applications in which there's not a design guideline established.
Okay. All right, so guys, with that information, we know that they're going to assign themselves as a condominium association, which that means that the RELAC deed does not apply in this instance. At least that's the letter from our council to theirs. Do we feel like that's new information, which obviously it is new information, to review, basically open back up the application to review these HVAC locations? Because I'm trying to remember, these are just going between the rear of the homes, I think, at the moment. But I don't know if there was any screening. I think there was landscape screening.
We did provide screening.
Yeah.
This was the instance where we provided, spacing between the driveways, which would accommodate landscaping and to provide screening.
Okay, so we that's in the currently approved plan. Okay,
This may be
I see it there.
good time to remind the board that this actually was an issue discussed at concept plan approval. The HVAC units were discussed way back then. And that's when we mirrored the driveways, we offset the garage doors, creating these landscape islands with a room to put the islands with room to put the HVAC units with landscape screening for the purpose of treating them and screening them as we could in the alley. So okay. I just want to remind the board, this was discussed during concept plan approval, however long ago that was.
Okay. I'd like to make a motion.
Go ahead, Elena.
That we accept this appeal based on new information, 2 pieces of new information. One, that the community intends to be a condominium association, and 2, that there is not a guideline through which the staff can approve this without coming to the DRB, without the application coming through the DRB.
Okay, there's a motion. I will second. Okay, I think Brian got it. Was that you, Brian?
No.
All right, so we have a second by Brian. Any further discussion on it? All right, all those in favor of the motion say aye.
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 Any against? Any abstentions? Okay, the motion passes. So we'll accept the appeal. I don't want to, I mean, you guys are welcome to represent the application. I don't think we need to. I think we just need to clarify this wording at the end here. So Elena, do you want to make a motion to,
Michael,
make a motion?
I'm sorry. Since you accepted the appeal, the application is reviewed de novo. So if there are any registered affected parties, you do have to hear them.
Okay. Are there any registered affected parties on?
If you're an affected party on this application, could you please raise your hand? We're not going to go through the list. We're just going to ask if anyone's an affected party. Did they like to raise their hand? I see one hand. Could we unmute Parker and Danny?
Asking to unmute.
Daniel, sorry. Okay, Parker, go ahead.
All right, just a reminder for affected parties, you have 3 minutes to state your case, and staff will control that time. So feel free to take the floor.
Thank you very much. And I want to thank the board for your ongoing efforts to work with us. We've done everything we can to be responsive. I don't have prepared remarks tonight, but I do want to speak in favor of this and just to reiterate some elements that we've mentioned in previous meetings, or that I've mentioned in previous meetings. We're working very hard to make sure that we accommodate as much input as we can. Our association is in really significant financial need. for a responsible development to provide for capital improvements for our failing infrastructure so that we can continue to be one of the more affordable places for folks to move into in Reston. And I realize that that isn't a design comment, but it is the need of the communities for this to be approved. So thank you again for all of your hard work in trying to improve this and make it good. And I just want to speak in favor of it as an affected party. Thank you. That's all. Over.
Thank you, Daniel.
Thank you. Any other affected parties?
I'm not seeing.
All right, cool. Does anyone want to make a motion on the application to clarify that last part of the HVAC?
Well, I'd like to ask if they're ready to present, if the applicant is prepared to present the locations of the HVAC units. To be honest with you, I don't remember the whole presentation that we saw before, and I'm not quite familiar with this, just briefly. And then I don't know if I guess this is a question to staff or to council. Do we need a motion that we're only going to look at the HVAC unit placement? We're not going to review the other portions that have already been approved?
Well, what I was thinking of doing in the motion would be that we'd say the original motion, we would use all the same language. I would just read it, read it all, and then just clarify what we're doing about the HVAC. Robbie or Lynn, do you guys want to, staff, do we have a good slide of where it kind of shows this, this kind of a couple of these alleyway conditions with the screening proposed? Is there a good slide, Robbie, do you know of that? We have a lot of new board members as well. Obviously, this has been a long process. I'm obviously familiar with the application because I've been here from the start, but is there?
I think slide 131 has a good view down the alley.
Oh, now I remember. Yeah.
Yeah, and so obviously this is not the architecture of the buildings anymore. Fully, it's not complete, exactly correct, but it does kind of show their intention. And I think they even, Robbie, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you guys in some instances even widened some of these, and they're kind of alternating every other unit, so that way we have wider strips to accommodate. Is Robbie muted by chance? Yeah, he's muted. Could you guys unmute Robbie Malm and Lynn?
Thank you. Yes, I was trying to answer. I was muted.
Yeah, I was wondering why you guys were being so quiet. There's got to be something.
I was trying. Yeah, just to recap, we had some of the design changes we made to shield these HVAC units as best we could, as we offset the rear garage doors, creating these islands between every other driveway that were a little wider. And so we buddied up every other, set of HVAC units, and there's some space in front of them that allowed for, some vegetative type screenage. And so, that's how we treated them and tried to disguise them throughout the alley.
If you go to 133, it shows it in plan, the staggered that we're talking about here, just if that helps, Elena.
You can see every driveway is a little offset to one side of the unit itself. So it creates those wider areas between, every other unit about, so we could buddy up the HVAC units and do some plantings.
Okay. And the plantings are still open for another approval, is that true, or have we approved the planting plan?
I think that was approved as a part of the presentation that we had made. We included the landscaping.
Yeah, so I think for this, I don't know if there's a specific bush, picked out, but I think we could, in our motion say that it's a, in this instance, a evergreen, shading appropriate for its environment bush. We're not, I don't want to tell them a specific, plant that they need to use. But if we do say an evergreen, appropriate for the specific environment that's being planted, and maybe some are in the sun and some are in the shade, and maybe you have to use two different types of plants, right? And that I think is okay, as long as they're, an evergreen and they're appropriate for that size island. So Elena, does that help answer kind of your
Yes,
questions?
I think, you want to go ahead and make that motion that you were going to make with that information?
Yeah, so I'll make, let me pull up the decision just so I make sure I have everything. So I'll make a motion to approve the application as submitted. And I'm going to read through just the decision that we had. Approve final site plan, 28 unit layout to include open space, sidewalks, grading, driveways, alleyways, and parking, and architectural designs on the property and locations indicated in the site plan, drawings and photos to include the following, which has the exterior color materials, elevation 2, 3, elevation 2, 4, 1, 3, kind of lists all the materials. Staff has those on for the record. They can list those. And to also approve with the requirement that the HVAC units be located per their plan with evergreen vegetative screening that is appropriate for its environment that it's planted in.
I'll second.
All right, so there's a motion, there's a second. Is there any discussion on that motion? Everyone's got it?
Yeah, Michael, I have a question on that, but are we having to, do we need to do a motion to have a guideline that staff can approve HVAC, location and on condos and single family?
Correct. So that's going to be actually, I believe it's up for discussion later tonight from staffs. I think it's up for later about our design guideline updates. So we'll be talking about that later, Brian.
Got it. Thanks.
Yep. All right. So all those in favor of the motion, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Any
Aye.
against? Any abstentions? All right. Motion passes. Thank you, guys.
May I also ask, I know that there was a little bit of confusion in the first letter we had about a 6-month implementation period, and I want to make sure that that's not part of the requirement because it's
You guys
gonna take a lot
can't build
longer.
everything in 6
We
months.
cannot get it done in 6 months.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
Staff, can we work on that wording for, obviously, I mean, I think typically we have 18 months is what we allow for projects, right?
It's 6
Before a
months to
continuance is
start,
needed?
6 months to start, 18 months to complete.
Yeah, and that's.
Yeah.
In this condition, though, we still, we have a final site plan process, which we still need to take through the county, which wouldn't really begin until December, January after their board approval. That's a 12-month process by itself before we get, land development permits to stick a shovel in the ground. So realistically, we're not starting construction on this for at least, 12 months from now, and it, could be a little bit more than that.
Okay. So staff, what do we do in the past, like with Tall Oaks or any other development that has those longer times? Do they have to just submit a quick thing that says, hey, we're in the process of getting our site plan. Can you please, continue our decision?
That's correct. It's just an email just saying, hey, this is where we are, this is our timeline, and then we would work with the applicant.
So I'll add to that. I would prefer that the DRB establish a time frame. What we did for Lake Ann Fellowship House when it was being constructed was that you provided, I think they phased it into different phases, but you all provided 7 years for that project to be complete. And so we are hoping that you all establish, 2 years, 2.5 years, something like that, for them to kind of have a deadline, and then they can request an extension if there's, product availability issues or something of that nature at that point.
Okay, but by default, our current timeline is 18 months.
Correct, but I would prefer staff not be in a position to continually approve extensions based on the amount of affected parties on this application. I think the DRB needs to set that date.
Can we do that after we've already voted, or can we make a new motion, or what's the rule on that?
You can amend a motion to add a time frame.
Tony, is that okay?
New motion is just fine.
Okay. So I will make a new motion just to add a timeline to this application as well. Robbie, Lynn, I mean, it's 3 years, you think appropriate?
Yeah, most likely, 1 year to, get shovel ready, get our LD permits, and then 2-year build out is probably good. So
I mean, worst case,
four
you could
means we
do-
wouldn't need to come back for an extension.
Yeah, so, yeah, so what I'll do is I'll make a motion to offer a timeline of 42 months, which is 3.5 years for construction or for this approval. There's a motion.
That's an amendment to the existing motion, correct?
Well, I think Tony was saying I should do a new motion.
Oh, okay.
Do we want to have an amendment saying when they need to start by? Because the way it's written is you have to start in 6 months and end in 18 months, or are we all good? I don't
I
care.
think as long as we give them a total project timeline, if they start in a year, if they start in 18 months, it doesn't necessarily matter as long as they're completed by that end date, essentially.
Okay.
Tony, do we want to amend the motion or a new motion?
You can do it either way. I mean, I think it's cleaner. You've already put the motion out there. Let's just finish that, vote on that, and then let's just establish a timeline with a new motion. That's very clean, in my opinion.
Okay. Yeah. Well, we already approved the one motion to approve the application. So now I'm just doing a new motion to add a timeline because of the unique size of this project to be 42 months from the approval letter. I believe, did anyone second that motion?
I'll second it.
All right, Mike B has seconded it. Any further discussion on that? All right, all those in favor say aye.
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 Any against? Any abstentions? All right, motion passes. All right, thanks,
Thank you
guys.
so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. All right, moving on to, speaking of new Lake Ann townhouses. I believe this was a deferred application, right?
That is correct. It was a deferred application.
So we have a deferred application, so the applicants are back. So if the applicants want to walk us through their updated plan, and then we will go through and hear from the affected parties, and then we will come back to see if the board has any questions for y'all, okay? So who will be presenting for Tri Point? Oh, you guys got on mute, Lynn, again.
Oh. Thank you. And I'm just going to give a brief introduction, and I'm going to actually turn this over to Greg Ruff and also our architect, Scott Fleming, to walk through our revisions that we have made, because I think we really want to focus on that. So just generally as an overview, you'll probably recall that this is the townhouse component of Lake Ann House. So when Lake Ann House was approved, there was the new building for the age-restricted housing, but then they're able to, support that by the approval of townhomes that will be market townhomes. And so Greg Ruff is with Tri Point, the contract purchaser of these townhomes, and he has been working with his architect, looking at, what was originally approved, what we had presented the last time, taking a look at all of the comments that were received, and would like to walk you through our new elevations that we have prepared. So Greg, I will turn that over to you.
Thanks, Lynn. Good evening, everyone. Greg Ruff, Tri Point Homes. Good to see you all again. We essentially have a presentation tonight that consists of two parts, two separate things that we want to review with you. First is to review the revised materials that we submitted a few weeks ago, which respond to the comments we received from the board in the decision letter that you see on the screen there. And then secondly, we have some new materials that we submitted for this meeting that we'd like to review with you as well. These would be the landscape plans for the community, as well as our amenity area plans. So I will run through the presentation slides that we submitted a few weeks ago, And like Lynn mentioned, we have a few team members that we'd like to include. Scott Fleming is our architect with Rust Orling, and also Joe Plumpy is our landscape architect with Studio 39. So they'll jump in and help me present some of the slides when we get to that point. So we're looking at the decision letter from September 27th. There are 8 bulleted items there. These are things that we were asked to address with our next submission. So as I go through our slides, I'll refer to the bulleted items that correspond with the slides that we're looking at, if that makes sense, just to link back to this decision letter with our materials. Okay, next slide, please.
It'll be a second. We're getting to the
Oh,
actual.
no problem. Yep. It worked a lot better in rehearsals, didn't it?
It always does. Thank you.
Yeah.
It's going to be further down, Anna Rosa.
Yeah, I think it starts on slide 23.
So my pages aren't numbered. For
Okay.
some reason.
But you've got the right cover page, I see.
And
on
the
the right side.
information is there. So I appreciate everyone bearing with me. And
There we go.
That's where we want to be. Perfect.
okay, I'll zoom out.
Yep. And then if you could just go to the next slide, that'd be great. Perfect.
Perfect.
So this is our rendered revised site plan, and this exhibit addresses bullets 1, 3, and 4 of the decision letter. In bullet 1 of the decision letter, we were asked to look at ways to address the adjacency concerns regarding lots 22 and 23. We have homes where we have side entries proposed, and there were some concerns raised about just how close the stoops were, and projections coming off the sides of the homes, and also I think some privacy concerns related to the windows on the 2 side elevations opposing each other directly, and we were asked to look at ways to address that. I want to correct one thing that I said back on September 20th. At that point, I said that the stoops were 6.8 feet apart, and that's not correct. That was an older plan from earlier in the year. Our stoops are currently proposed to be 9.8 feet apart, so that's 3 additional feet. So one of the comments or one of the suggestions made by the board that evening was to consider possibly staggering the units to create an offset between the stoops and the projections and the windows. So we have looked at the plan and found a way to do that by pulling lot 23 forward, or the home on lot 23 forward, and pushing the home on lot 22 backward a few feet in each direction. And by doing that, we've been able to offset the stoops and projections and windows, not completely, but we've done it to the extent where we think it's addressed the concern. And there's another illustration that we submitted. I'm not sure where it is in the presentation, but I guess we'll get to it when we get to it. It's probably not worth looking around for it, but it shows how the windows would no longer be offset between lots 22 and 23. One other thing you can see on the plan here, we've done to, I think, at least clean up and declutter the area between lots 22 and 23. We've got, previously we were showing a lead walk coming out of both homes with the side entry, 2 parallel sort of dual lead walks running side by side. And that didn't really make sense to us. So we decided to consolidate them and just have one individual shared lead walk coming out. And there it is. Yep, perfect. So the main house that you see is lot 22. And then in red sort of dashed line and with red hatching, you see the windows that represent the house across from it, which would be on lot 23. And so you can see most of the windows are not lined up anymore, and that takes care of the privacy concerns. The stoops don't directly abut each other. They're a little bit offset. So we hope that addresses the concerns, especially with respect to privacy. But homes at this distance apart, I think probably 14, 15 feet, are not uncommon, not atypical for an urban type of environment. And this is generally the separation, essentially the same separation that was shown on the plan originally back in 2018 when this was first approved by the DRB. If we could then move, I guess, back to the start of the presentation and move to the next slide. I'm sorry. If we could go back to the site plan slide that we were on in a row, so that'd be great. Yes. One before this, please. Yes, thanks. So the other thing we were asked to look at that's shown on this plan was, and this ties back to bullets 3 and 4 in the decision letter. This has to do with showing the area between our community, especially lots 31 through 36, and the nearest townhomes at Hickory Cluster. So we've zoomed out basically in our plan view with this rendered site plan, and we've added dimension lines to show the width of that treed buffer, existing trees to remain, to show that it's a pretty sizable tree save area that exists between us and Hickory Cluster. And there was a specific concern about the Fellowship Square, the turnaround that you see there, and the possibility of headlights shining into the backs of the homes at Hickory Cluster. So at that location, we've got about 125, 126 feet of existing wooded area to remain, which I think should address the issues with headlights. We do have landscaping proposed in addition to that at the end of the travelway. So I really feel like that should take care of any concerns related to headlights. If we can move to the next slide, please. This is just a rendering key, if you could zoom out just a bit. And this just shows the drawings that are going to be coming up in the following slides, which perspective they're taken from. The one that's most important is down at the entrance, if you can see at the bottom right-hand side. And that's going to be, that's the perspective that we're going to be looking at on the next slide, which is the rendered 3D view. So the rendered illustrative rendering, this ties with bullet number 6 of the decision letter. In bullet 6, we were asked to provide a 3-dimensional drawing to show what a typical building would look like if all the homes in the building had a front-facing rooftop terrace. I think previously in September, we showed you a typical building that had some homes with rooftop terrace and some without. And a question came up, well, what would it look like if all the homes had that option selected and every single unit in the block had rooftop terraces? So you asked us to show you what that looked like in a rendered 3D perspective. And so we've done that here. And we've picked the building lots 1 through 7, which is the building that faces right up towards North Shore Drive, because we wanted to, that's going to be the highest visibility building in the community. So we wanted to show that on the rendering. So it really, I think, does a good job of showing that the rooftop terraces really won't be that visible from the ground. And as you move further back from the site, I think they'll be even less visible as you get on the other side of North Shore Drive. There's a lot of existing trees out there, and the grade drops a little bit, which would make it even harder to see those rooftop terraces. And I think they're pretty attractive as they are. We have a lot of landscaping that we'll be putting in up along the frontage of the community. So all of these things in combination, I think will bring a very attractive appearance to these homes, even if all the units are selected for the rooftop terrace. Next slide, please. This next slide should be our typical front and rear elevations. Okay, this is actually the comparison. Yes, this is the comparison graphic that we submitted a few weeks ago. I think you zoom out a little more. There should be a third row, I think.
Down at the bottom.
Okay, so the top row shows the original elevations from November of 2018. Middle row shows what we presented to you in September, and the bottom row shows you our current elevations with revisions made per the comments we received from you on the 20th of September. And I think let's move on to the next one. We can look more close up at the changes we've made. So this is our typical front and rear elevations, which are revised for the comments we received from the board on the 20th of September. And this ties with bullets 5, 7, and 8 in the decision letter. And Scott Fleming from Russ Dorling is here. And Scott, would you like to talk us through the changes?
Sure. There were a number of comments last time related to the rooftop terraces, the shed roofs on the top, the bays, the arrangement of the windows, and what we took a kind of collective approach. Previous to that, we were kind of mimicking some of the things that had been on a previous approval for this. And I think it was leading to a bit of a chaotic version. So based on the comments, we took this and adjusted the bays that you see and kind of made the proportions of the windows a little bit more consistent, sort of like a kit of parts that we could use to apply to the project, and then use that within kind of a geometric structure, kind of like what you'd see over at Hickory Cluster, to form kind of the geometric shapes that you're looking at. So the bays, what we in our previous version, the sides of the bays didn't quite appear consistent. They weren't as punctuated with tops and bottoms. Ms. Garrison, I think you were commented on how we really should label these 1 through 5, but you weren't a fan of number 2 and number 4 starting from the left. And those are the only ones without bays. So basically what we took is that bay form, and since it was kind of a unique feature for the project, we applied that in various forms to the different townhouses to both provide the character and the variety. So the window proportions have become very geometric, but yet in different schemes. We've consistently applied the larger windows with the floor, the I call them floor transoms, but that's complete misnomer. The windows on below the typical sill line that go to the floor, similar to what you'll see at Hickory Cluster next door and at the new Lake Ann building to the east. The roof terrace forms, like Greg mentioned, it was a comment of previously we were showing them as kind of a mix, but here we show them consistently across all tops of units. We took a look at the roof bearing point along the top of that shed dormer to basically kind of pinch it down while providing a low slope shed roof across them to kind of make that it's easier to see on the 3D rendering when we were looking at it before, but basically kind of give that it's kind of capped the terrace while pinching down the bearing point to lower just above the windows, which we also increased the glazing to make those a little bit more kind of open in appearance, the shed dormers at the top. The garage doors, we've made all the same color and give them kind of a rich dark color to kind of strengthen the base. And if you go to can you flip back to the 3D view just because it's a lot easier to see on that one. One more. There's 2 of the same ones. This one's a sharper one. We submitted it slightly later. So you can see here that on the corner bay, that the corner posts there, the 2 sides match as it wraps the corner. You can see the brick on the sides has now been raised up. It was a board comment that asking for less siding, more brick on the side elevations. And the bay now matches, so it's nice and consistent all the way around from the side to the front, creating that strong kind of horizontal line there between the brick and the siding above. And that, what I think what Greg was getting, that is your high visibility elevation. And it also has a favorable, there's 2 different floor plans in this project for a kitchen location, and this one has a rear kitchen, which allows us to put that kind of strong bay there on the side elevation above the entry. So I think if you go back, sorry for making you flip around, go back to the that comparison page, or one more down. So on the rear elevations, it was also a little bit more chaotic. It was a fair comment that we were designing from the inside out, and so we've adapted the plan here to be a little bit more regular, kind of forming that bracket where the windows up. We've added some windows on the top floor to make it a little more bracketed with like everything kind of lines up in the same position. That's what else am I missing, Greg? Anything?
No, nothing. But I would just like to clarify what the comment you just made about the brick on the end units. We were asked to consider adding some brick on the second level for the end units, I think wrapping around to the rear as well for the ends. What we're proposing is to do that on 4 units within the community, and those would be the ones that really are visible from the outside. There's Unit 36, which sides up to North Shore Drive. So we would propose doing it there, as well as 3 other lots that are visible as you drive in the entry road that separates our community from Lake Ann Fellowship House. So that's
Can
what's
we look at
shown.
them on the plan?
I'm sorry?
Could you point it out
Yes.
on the plan? Sorry to make
Yes.
Anna Rosa flip around.
Definitely, yeah.
Can you go back to that page that had all the that had the keys on it? Keep going back. It was noted on there. So those
yeah.
ones that are shown as A/A4.
Yeah, those are the ones.
Those are all the high visibility units.
And so the brick, so there'd be a different elevation for that lot 23, 22, 30, 31, 8, and 7.
Yes, if you go to the side elevations page, I had a whole sheet for that, right? One more, keep going past the fronts. Oh, that was the comparison. There you go.
This one
There
here.
you go. So like I mentioned, there are actually, the short story is there, the one on the right is the high visibility units. That's A on whatever page this was. Those are the high visibility units that were on those 4 lots. The 2 on the left are the, let's call the low visibility units. So our floor plans have 2 different options in them, one with a front kitchen and one with a rear kitchen. And if you have a rear kitchen, it allows you to put the center window above the entry, which is what B is. So C is a rear kitchen, B is a rear kitchen, C is a center kitchen.
Yes, and so this elevation we're looking at now, typical side elevations, this ties with bullet 8 in the decision letter.
Yeah, so I guess you would want to say we focused on the high visibility units and providing that 2-story brick on the right-hand side there.
Yeah. If we could go to the next slide. So this is just an exhibit showing the perspective from Baron Cameron, both existing with the trees and then, the rendered up version showing with our proposed landscaping and the existing trees. This is an exhibit that we showed you back in September. So you've seen this one before. If we could move to the next one, please. So this is an enlarged elevation and material schedule. Scott, do you want to talk us through these materials?
Well, technically, it's largely unchanged from the previous because in the materials themselves, we didn't really have any comments. So it's mostly been updated for the new elevations. That's it. But you can see that the windows are called out on the right-hand side. We've got dark colored window frames, kind of contemporary appearance, and various dark cornices, a mixture of brick and the panels that, as I recall last time, we discussed as a reveal panels with the.
Can you clarify what a synthetic wood cladding is?
So we use that term a little bit.
Cement.
We use that term a little bit generically because there's a couple different products that you can get depending on availability, but it becomes either hardy painted with a reveal or a product like smart siding. Do you know what that? It's kind of a wood.
LP smart siding.
Yeah, exactly. LP smart siding.
Okay. All right. Just I didn't see it in the material schedule there, so I just was trying to figure out exactly what it was going to be. But okay.
And this slide, excuse me, ties with bullet 5 in the letter. Okay, next slide, please. This is also a slide that you saw back in September, just showing rear yard fencing, which will be optional, but what we would propose to use, and deck railings and deck materials, house numbers. Next slide, please. And also we showed you this one in September as well, just the retaining wall details, matching exactly what's built next door at Lake Ann Fellowship House. Next slide, please. And this is, again, the side elevation with proposed finished materials, tying to bullet 8 in the decision letter. Pretty self-explanatory. Scott, anything you want to say here? Is it?
No, I mean, a lot of these are basically just been updated, the same information that was before, updated with the latest elevations.
Mm-hmm. Okay, next slide, please. Again, front elevation with proposed finished materials with design revised from September. Next slide, please. Again, side elevation.
This one's the two-story brick version with the darker color palette.
Yes, so again, this would be proposed for the high visibility lots.
Just for clarification, Michael, if I could, there's areas that say color TBD. Are you providing those colors?
I thought we were.
Isn't
That
that
exact
demo?
spandrel panel that, I mean, that I only see that spandrel panel and the synthetic wood. Can you
Yeah.
flick back to the, and if we don't provide,
Should I keep going back?
oh, I'm sorry, I was trying to flip over my computer's look. That material schedule page.
Here?
Yep.
Yeah.
Would you like me to zoom in?
Yes, custom P1. Oh, so on the exterior paint color, you can see you have paint colors there that are noted. And then what we call is they generally match, it's a color that matches the siding color. So S1 color matches P1, color matches S1. P2 color matches S2. So I think our intent is basically to pick a matching color to the hardy colors.
Well, your rendering kind of makes it look like it's a darker.
Yeah, the only one
The
I'm-
spandrel panel color makes it look like it's almost like an accent.
I'm not sure
color
we've
that's going to be going.
You know, I need to look that up to see.
You guys
whether we
may just need
provide
to
that
clarify
info.
kind of what those color codes are.
Sure.
So we just so you know, it can all be documented properly.
Sure, agreed. So, and I know we were trying to provide, so it's obviously a different color than the surrounding bay material, because it's darker, and it was definitely intentionally not as dark as all the other trim. So it's kind of a medium tone. Okay, we can clarify that.
Would you like me to move to the next slide?
Yep, keep going.
Yes, please, yeah.
I'm gonna zoom back out a little bit.
So that should take us to the end of the, yes, of the architectural materials. And then from this point in the presentation, we're moving into the new materials that we did not review with you in September. So this is the site amenity areas, furnishings and finishes. And I'd like to introduce Joe Plumpy, our landscape architect with Studio 39. And Joe can help talk through some of these details. As soon as he unmutes himself. You might be muted. That's fine. I can get started. This is sort of an overview sheet. So all these images that you see here will be shown again on the specific areas that we're about to show. So we can move on to the next slide, please. So this is the North Shore Drive streetscape area enlargement plan. And this is essentially the same proposed treatment for this area that was shown on the 2018 zoning plans and approvals from the DRB back in 2018. We really haven't changed this area. It's a very heavily landscaped area. And towards the corner at the entrance, there's a little walkway that comes into a circle where we'll have a couple benches and some stamped concrete, just a nice little mini plaza with a book lending library in that space as well. So
I think Joe is now unmuted.
Yes, thank you
you're
so much.
unmuted. Okay, Joe.
Yeah, Greg, you did an excellent job.
Thank you, Joe.
So,
Take it away.
Continue.
No. Go ahead.
Honest to God, all we're doing is to be very compatible type site furnishings and the like that is adjacent to us right now in the existing building that's built right next door to us in the Fellowship House. Essentially, the same kind of pavings, benches. The thing that's new is we have a different light fixture, which is a sharp cutoff light fixture versus the one that's on the existing building just to the plan right of us. And that we did because it's a little bit more friendlier looking, but as well as for aesthetically pleasing and performs better in our residential communities that we've worked with TriPoint on before. Some of the things that you'll see, dog park and so forth, which we have a gravel type surface there, and maybe a hoop or two for them to go into, dog stations, trash receptacles, all the site furnishings will be fixed, such as the picnic table as well as the benches. And we have a shade structure that is also programmed beside one of the units themselves. That is not the design. It's kind of just shows you very simplistic contemporary design that would be somewhere placed adjacent to the townhouse on the plan. Next. And there again, that shows the library drop-off box that we like to have there at the entrance into the community, as well as the bench and the stamped concrete, which is similar to what's adjacent in the adjacent parcel built. Next, please. The multi-purpose court. This is where that arbor structure would evolve. We'll do some slight modifications to this area to update the design that you'll see perhaps at the next presentation. We have a multi-purpose court, which will be some kind of surface that is user-friendly for all ages. And the picnic tables and so forth would be placed in underneath the arbor structure. Again, we have the plans to kind of massage this area just a little bit. Next, please. And the dog park area itself, one of the things that we want to do is to perhaps move the fence away from the sidewalk of lot 30 so that the dog's not right there nipping at your toes as you go into lot 30. And perhaps move the fence to plan left and then have the shrubbery and the screening on the outside of the fence versus inside the fence, so the plants can be protected from the dogs, but also do the work for lot 30 there. The fence itself is it's not chain link, but it's a vinyl coated product that we use a lot. It's kind of invisible, but yet does its job for the dogs itself, about 4 feet in height. And the surface, as I said before, would be more of a gravel type surface. Thank you. I think the next one.
Can I ask a question?
Absolutely.
Is it a low dust gravel?
Yes, it would be. To be determined, it would be decomposed granite, which has a binder to it, which helps, or it could be a small pea gravel. So low dust. Yes, we don't want dust.
Having had 2 golden retrievers at a dog park, a low dust gravel is preferable.
Yeah, without question. And what's interesting is this is a very small dog park, so they won't have a good head of steam in there. But dogs will do their be as active as they want. So we want to keep it as friendly for the occupants of the dog park as well as the neighbors. This is that area that's up in where the gang mailbox is, one of the gang mailboxes, and the bench and the stamped concrete too as well. Next, please. Previous reviewed.
Yeah,
That's
if
all.
I could just jump in. Thanks, Joe.
Yes, sir.
On the 2 areas, Anna Rosa, would you mind going back just to one more? And then one more again. This area here, when we came to see you in September, there were some comments really that were specific to the dog park about just how close the dog park was to the adjacent home. And I think, and we agree with those concerns. We share those concerns. And that's what Joe was referring to when he said we're trying to look at a way to redesign these spaces to just create a little more separation between the amenity area and the amenity space and the adjacent house. And this slide that we're looking at here has the same issue that we're working through. And we didn't have a sketch or any kind of design done in time to show to you this evening. So we wanted to just focus on the furnishings and the materials. But assuming we can come up with something that works a little better, we will come back to you with a revised design. Just wanted to let you know that. Okay, if you could just take us to the end of the presentations. I think, okay. So that's it for the colored presentation, the colored materials that we submitted. We did have the landscape plans that we submitted separately as a separate document, and those are what's intended to go in for our second submission on the site plan. And if you may recall, in 2018, when the zoning was approved, there was a very specific landscape plan that was shown on that approved zoning plan. And so we are sticking very closely with our landscape plan now to what was approved then. We need to meet the substantial conformance requirement and standard with our landscape plan. So what we submitted to you was what we intend to go in on our second submission to the county with. But if you have any questions or comments about what we submitted to you, we'd be glad to talk to you about that. And finally, to complete our presentation, I just wanted to discuss the letter sent from Hickory Cluster. We received a copy of it a few weeks ago, and I'd just like to take a minute to address the concerns that were raised in that letter. The first item in their letter dealt with exterior vehicle headlights. Okay, here it is. And
I think this is the more recent letter, but
okay, this is one I haven't seen, so I'm not really ready to talk about this one. The one from October 17th.
17.
Yeah,
That's not in the application, I don't believe. So if you want to just go through the points.
sure.
we'll present.
No problem. Yeah, the first concern that was raised in the October 17th letter had to do with exterior vehicle headlights. And this is what I was touching on earlier with the plan and the buffer of 125 feet or so of existing trees to remain. And the additional landscaping we would install at the end of the travelway at the turnaround spot. With all of these things together, I really don't see the headlight glare being an issue. I think we've addressed that. Okay, that looks like it. Yep. So I feel like that really should be addressed through the other things that are being done. The second item of concern in the letter here is the exterior HVAC equipment and noise from that. We really don't believe this will be an issue either for a number of reasons. Again, the significant distance between our nearest homes and the homes at Hickory Cluster, there's an elevation difference of about 7 to 9 feet between our homes, our nearest homes, and the homes at Hickory Cluster. And we've got background noise coming from other sources in the area nearby, most notably Bear and Cameron Avenue. So those things in combination, I feel really just take care of any concerns that there might be. I think any HVAC units that would be sitting right behind our homes would really not be audible at Hickory Cluster, not in the rear yards and certainly not inside the homes. So we just don't believe this is really an issue. And the third item of concern.
And you submitted a noise.
We did.
We
Yes,
did submit a noise study too.
correct. We had a noise
A
consultant.
noise analysis.
A noise report, noise analysis done, and found that at the property line at Hickory Cluster, those HVAC units would be at about 38 decibels. And if we were to install rear yard fencing on the backyards of those homes, lots 31 through 36, which we intend to do, that would be knocked down to 28 decibels, which is virtually, it's inaudible. So we feel like really that's not an issue. The third item of concern was the exterior architecture. And we feel that the architecture we're presenting tonight is responsive to the concerns that were identified by Hickory Cluster in their letter. So with that, that's all the remarks that I had prepared. So we're happy to answer questions.
Okay, thank you, guys. I have to go to the affected parties to hear from them. So then we'll come back and ask you guys any questions we may have, okay?
Thank you.
Staff, do we have the affected parties on this? Just a reminder for affected parties, you have 3 minutes to state your case. If you're representing a group or a cluster, you have 5 minutes. So is
Anne Young Green.
Do we know who's on? I don't know if I want to go through a whole list.
No,
Yes.
we have the two that are on.
Okay, great.
Anne Young Green, asking her to unmute.
And you're unmuted.
There's two Ann Junkins. Maybe unmute the other one too.
Yes.
Both are unmuted, or we've asked both to unmute.
Ann, are you there? All right. Let's move on to the next one, and then we'll come
Okay.
back. Hopefully, we'll figure that out.
Michael Poss.
Hi, could you unmute Sylvia Merrill? She's the cluster president, and then we'll go from there.
Yes.
Hello, this is Sylvia Merrill.
Hello, Sylvia.
Hey, Sylvia. So, are you guys representing the cluster?
Yes, I'm the president of the board, and Michael Poss is a consultant. He helps the board out in these areas. In addition, he was a previous board member who was quite involved in trying to establish standards that would affect Hickory Cluster with this new development. So I will allow Michael to go ahead and address the letter.
Okay. Michael, you'll have 5 minutes.
Very good, thank you. Let me recap where we are, reset my timer here. All right. Recap where we are. This is a third iteration of designs. I started in 2014. I was involved from that point until currently. For the 2022 iteration, which is what we're discussing now, there was the September 20th meeting. In response, we produced an October 17th affected party statement. And then we've got some additional documents, the September 27th to 29th DRB letter, the October 25th package that the applicant has presented tonight, TriPoint, and then their acoustics report dated November 1st. So in response to those, we produced an affected party statement number 2, which we got to LaShonda and hopefully to all of you today. I'm here to talk about that letter that we submitted today, the affected party statement number 2. And I'm afraid I've got to disagree with previous statements that what the applicant TriPoint has done in terms of the vehicle headlights remediation and also noise remediation. It's just, I'm sorry, we have a different perspective and a different opinion. For the vehicle headlights, we're really talking about the northwest corner dead end between lots 30 and 31. I submitted an attachment A at the end of that letter, if you could go to it. Blow-ups of a couple of their landscape drawings. The top one shows that you've got some, let's see, what do you call them? You've got some drooping fetterbush and northern bayberry, which are 24 to 30 inches high. I'm sorry, but headlights are 24 to 54 inches high, depending on the size of the vehicle. So easy fix here, plant higher shrubs, please. That will keep the lights from going into the bedrooms. Yes, there is an elevation difference, but that puts the bedrooms more at street height. So folks, just plant higher shrubs and you take care of that. That's the main issue there. And by the way, vegetation on the TriPoint side, it's been mostly removed, I believe, up to the lot line, and there may be some invasive species vegetation that will be removed, may be removed on the Hickory Cluster side, so will be much less legacy vegetation there than is either currently, well, than is there currently. So we think it's insufficient what's in the landscape plan. Exterior HVAC equipment noise. Yes, thank you very much for the perspective provided in your engineering report. We've discussed that with a consultant that we're retaining, an acoustics engineering consulting firm, to review that document in more detail. Some issues have come up about whether or not that's going to be sufficient. Our neighbors should be able to open their windows anytime, day and night, and not hear a 76 decibel, 4 of them, heat pumps. That noise does carry. I don't believe that what's there and what's proposed will be enough. I do understand that probably the best we can do is to put a noise barrier in between. Currently, those fences are optional. The privacy fences in the back of those homes, you've indicated you may require them. Okay, fine. Let's determine a design that's acceptable to both of us that does maximum remediation, limiting of the sound, and possibly look at other units that may be less noisy. So we are in the process of retaining an acoustics engineering firm to kind of validate what's going on, give us some additional perspective. And we'd like DRB to defer any HVAC decisions until you have a report from our folks. And also ask TriPoint to install 54-inch minimum height shrubs at the end of the northwest corner, east-west traffic flow street that could blast headlights into the northernmost Hickory cluster units. That's it in a nutshell. I've got 34 seconds. Any questions of me, or I'd be glad to answer them ongoing. Please take a look at the November 15th letter, which we gave you today. That's our current position on the issues.
Great. Thank you, Michael.
Yeah.
All right. Staff, anybody else, the other Apple affected party? Figure out how to unmute.
Let's see here.
Good afternoon. This is Christy Zeitz. I'm CEO for Fellowship Square, owner of the Lake Ann House next door on to this proposed development. I just want to say that I'm excited to see the updates that TriPoint has made. Our board of directors and the 350 residents that live at Lake Ann House are looking forward to having a new community next door. Seeing the plans tonight, it certainly it helps to achieve our goals of intergenerational community. Looks like they will, this will be attractive to families with kids and pets. And this is going to just increase the quality of life, make it so much better for the residents at Lake Ann House. So we really appreciate the vision that TriPoint has for this property, and we're in full support of what they've proposed tonight. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Sorry, Cam Adams on behalf of the Reston Association Board of Directors. I just wanted to add 2 points related to the streetlights. There, from what I could see, there weren't any specifics on the locations of the streetlights, nor a photometric study provided. And then also just clarification on the colors and the color palette so that staff can make sure that the cluster standard is as accurate as possible related to either the custom colors being formulas or having those that information clarified for us. That's it.
And there was still that one affected party. I don't know if they were able to.
Not able to
Youngkin, I believe, and Young Ren.
Unable to unmute her, and
okay.
But Ann, if you are dialing in, if you press *6, you'll be able to unmute yourself to address the board.
Don't hear from her. We can keep going. I just want to. I know she was a registered. Was she a registered affected party?
Yes.
Yes.
Do we have a statement from her?
Not an updated statement. Nothing that you haven't seen before.
Okay. All right. Okay. I'm going to go around the room, see if anyone has any questions for the applicant. Just before I go around the room, let me just ask one quick question about the RA board concerns about the photometric. You guys have to submit a photometric, I'm assuming, to the county for your site plan. You guys probably have that already. You guys have something that you could submit to us next time you come back with the final landscaping stuff and all that?
Yeah, this is Greg from Tri-Point. Yes, absolutely. We do have a plan that shows the location of all the street lights, and we've sent it off to the lighting manufacturer to prepare the photometric plan. I don't think we've seen it come back yet, but we will definitely submit that on the next submission.
Okay, cool.
Yep.
And then obviously the paint colors, that could be something. Obviously we can get the proper paint codes,
Yep.
and or names of the paints, whatever it be, to address those two concerns from Cam.
Yes.
Okay, let me go around the room and see if anyone has any other questions for you all. Okay. Let's start with Sarah. Did you have any questions?
No, I don't. I thought it was a very good presentation. Thank you.
Brian, did you have any questions?
I do have a couple questions. It was brought up earlier, but I just want to echo the need to clarify the spandrel panel on the elevations. I think just understanding what if it's going to match the surrounding or what color exactly that's going to be and how that ties in would be really important. I had a question about the roof, and then that tying into the color of the garage door. So was the roof going to be kind of this kind of very dark charcoal, almost black roof? Is that the intent?
Yep. Okay. Make sure I'm not on mute. We call for a dark asphalt shingle roof. It is irrespective of the garage door color. The garage door color was just meant to be kind of a dark color, more in keeping with the trim that you see there with those kind of strong accent lines.
So, I mean, I think it looked like the windows were calling for a bronze colored frame.
Yeah, that is correct. So it's a dark color, not necessarily black, all in kind. I think I might hear where you're going from in terms of keeping them all relatively in the same family.
Yeah, I was just wondering about the black for the door. It seems I heard your explanation about kind of creating a strong base. I think that's a nice point. But it seemed like in some of the color tones and the bronze windows, that seems like a time more back to the Lake Ann Fellowship House a little bit more. So I wonder if that would be something you all could consider about potentially looking at an alternative to lighten that up so that it was maybe more maybe in that dark bronze family. I think that might be more harmonious with the rest of the
in
colors,
character.
just something
we can take a look at that. I think it would be in keeping with kind of that feel for the different colors, for the different accent colors.
And then I know this is getting really picky and I apologize, but looking at the landscape furniture, I guess, the site furnishings, I wonder if it would be possible to look at an alternative to the cluster mailbox. Again, I know this is getting really detailed and nitpicky. I don't think that's very much in keeping with kind of the overall scheme and being right there at Lake Ann. I mean, it looks like it's sitting on a column with the base and molding. I wonder if you could possibly consider an alternative to that might be more kind of the kind of in the mid-century vocabulary possibly that I think would fit better with the setting.
Certainly, Brian. This is Greg from Tri-Point. Absolutely. Okay, that's fine. Joe, if you're able to chime in, maybe you could help us try and find something, Joe. Brian, we will definitely look at that. Thank you.
And then my final question would be, you went in detail on like the arbor structure and some of those kind of feature areas. I'm trying to find the right slide where you call out the stamped concrete. And I was just curious what the typical finish would be for like the typical sidewalk. Like even that slide there is fine, but that's kind of shown in that yellowish color. Is it all going to be stamped concrete, or is the stamped concrete just for the feature areas?
It's just for the amenity areas, not on North Shore. If you just scroll up just a little bit, yeah, I guess this plan doesn't really do a good job of distinguishing between the regular sidewalk, the regular concrete sidewalk, and the stamped concrete. So here, you've got the regular concrete sidewalk going down the North Shore Drive, but then as the walkways come in towards the circle there, that would all be stamped concrete.
Yeah. Yeah. Hi, this is Joe Plumpy. Yeah, I was going to say it's going to be soft room concrete, your standard concrete that you see with score lines. And the comment about the gang mailbox, yeah, we'll look at something definitely more contemporary to deal with it. That's our kind of go-to thing, but not a problem at all. We'll be doing something that's blends in with the architecture.
Okay, thank you. That was it for me.
Yep. Thanks.
Thanks, Brian. Elena?
I think the elevations are significantly improved. Thank you for the hard work. I do agree that and they're quite attractive. I do agree with the previous comment that keeping the colors together on the doors, maybe matching the dark trim would be better. It actually might help them blend. I do like the consistent color of the garage doors, using a consistent color, but
Okay.
I just, I don't have any other comments to add from the other previous comments.
We can definitely take a look at that in detail. I hate to say it, sometimes some manufacturers black comes out virtually bronze, and some manufacturers bronze comes out gray. It's kind of, and we try to stick with standard colors because they're more durable. But we'll see what's available. And I agree.
Okay. John, did you have anything?
No, I just think that the new elevations are a significant improvement over the previous iteration. I'm quite excited to see this get built looking like the way it does.
Okay. Mike B.
No further comments, sir. Everybody, I echo previous comments made by the board.
Okay. Jim?
Thank you for providing the perspective showing the high visibility units. That's a very nice touch that you guys have put together there. I think it creates some really nice variation in those units, and it's going to have a really nice complement to the building next door. Nice job.
Thanks.
Well, that just leaves me. I got a little bit of a list, but I do think the rendering shows and visualizes more aesthetically what I think I wish for all of these units. I think a couple of these, the options and the things, they're kind of throwing me off a little bit. I think that the one thing that was throwing me, and you correct me if I'm wrong, was last application, all of the windows were casements and kind of a mixture of awning or transom windows. And now it looks like we've all moved to double hung windows. Is that correct?
They are a mix of hung windows and fixed. Like the
what led to that decision? Because I'm a little disappointed in that it moved away from those casement style windows that we had before.
A couple different things: meeting certain requirements, keeping a certain consistency with their proportions. Kind of, it was an earlier comment to make them a little more residential in scale. So that was one of the reasons for the change. And some of the line work that we set up with the horizontals and things kind of led to that decision.
Yeah, it's a little, I think the casement windows, I think, just kind of added a little bit of extra contemporariness to the architecture that I feel like is now kind of going to be missing. I think in your one pictures they look like they're almost all fixed windows 1/1s almost, but those in reality are going to be double hung windows that are kind of all molded together. And I think they're gonna, in reality, I don't know if it's going to come out as pictured. Whereas casement windows, I know, are going to just provide that little bit more light. It's going to be a little bit more defined frame. So I'm not a huge fan of that switch. The second question I had was on the elevations with the center kitchen versus the rear kitchen. I think, Ana Rosa, if you could go to slide 38, I know you don't have numbers. Yeah, you do there. So yeah, if you go down just 5 slides to 38. So this elevation, so you're saying basically these prominent end units potentially could either be 1 or 2. It could either be elevation B or C, correct?
That is correct.
And so I feel like elevation C is very weak architecturally. I mean, it has no, it doesn't, to me, it looks like the side of a building with a front door on. And it's really missing that kind of entrance piece like that the elevation B has or elevation A has. And I think it's really throwing me off from a design standpoint because it just doesn't really create that entrance that the other two have. I also am curious what this, some doors, it looks like the brick goes all the way around, and then these doors, it looks like you actually have siding that comes down beneath the canopy.
Yeah, there's a little recess there. Basically, it's slightly.
Okay,
deeper
so
in
that's
that spot.
recessed in
So
a little
it's-
bit. Okay.
So it's treated just a little bit different, and the
Gotcha.
gaps between the windows and doors were a little smaller. So we used siding to
Gotcha.
kind of treat that.
Yeah. What is inside the floor plan there? Because with that door with the double hung window next to it, it just is. To me, visually, they're not compatible units to go next to each other. Typically, typically we would maybe have, two double doors, or there'd be a transom, or a side light or something. But having that one window there, just kind of.
There's a wall there. It's actually let's see here. If you're looking at elevation B, so the garage is on the right, the car pulls in, and the door itself is kind of on the wall between the garage and the unit.
Gotcha. Okay. So those two windows are in the garage.
Yes, the two windows that you see there to the right of the door. That is correct.
Okay. Yeah, I feel like that elevation C, let's call it, just needs more. It's as simple as taking the brick up, that second story on that one. I don't know. It just seems like it's not relating to the others, the other end units. And the fact that these options, like if everybody picks a center kitchen, there could be, 5 or 6 of these throughout the community. And then all of a sudden there's all these really weak end units that aren't really the same architecture that the main, facing the street have. So I think that that elevation needs a little bit of work to kind of get there. I appreciate the dog park fence comment about putting the shrubbery on the outside the fence. I think that's a good call. Sounds like you guys kind of still have the landscaping design final arrangement kind of up in the air, but I do think that is a good mention. I do hear Hickory Cluster's concerns about those car lights. I do think that just proposing, you heard earlier tonight with other applications, proposing some sort of taller evergreen shrub appropriate for that area. When it's planted, that it's, going to grow between 3 and 6 feet tall. That way it's able to sufficiently screen it year round. You guys are doing a ton of plantings, I think, to be receptive to that request and just update those plants to make sure that they are kind of a taller evergreen shrub, is something that is easily doable. And I think that's all I have question wise. Board, do you guys want to have a little discussion about the design? You guys are looking for what type of approval are you guys looking for tonight? Is this
that was my
full
question.
architectural? Or maybe I think Lynn would be able to
I think
clarify that.
We were hoping, we do appreciate that we will have to come back and answer a couple questions at the January meeting, but we were hoping to get some sort of conceptual approval this evening, of what we presented so that we could get a final approval in January.
Okay. And in that final approval, you would bring all the final landscaping
Correct.
Elements,
we
and photometric plan, it looks like.
And some of the colors that, the colors that we showed
correct, okay.
TBD, I think, and also we would have corrected, like, for example, putting the landscaping on the outside of the fencing for the dog park, those little.
Okay, gotcha, okay.
But we think, but again, if we could get a conceptual approval, that would be great.
Okay. So with that, Does anybody have any comments about any of the members' comments?
I would like to say that thank you for pointing out those side elevations. I forgot to mention them. I wholeheartedly agree with what you said. And C is weak as an elevation.
Yeah, I mean, I'd prefer there just be A and B, and those are the two options, and there's no, there's no, you know, C, or there's a way to make C, you know, the floor plan is still C, but there's a way to make that kind of be more in tune with the design with B.
I'm not
Scott,
really-
do you think you could do something that kind of cleans that elevation up to kind of be very similar to B?
I didn't want to interrupt, so I was kind of quiet. So the chat now, I would say to TriPoint's character, they provide a number of options for purchasers, which can confuse the architect as much as anybody else, I will say. So I kind of I understand where you're coming from. To some degree, it's a function of there are two different plans that they really advocate for owners, those two different kitchen locations, because it provides a different living kind of scenario. Either your living room is connected to your dining or not, or the kitchen is in between. And I get that. And so the benefit, they basically have pros and cons is the challenge, in the sense that once you put the kitchen somewhere, it reduces your window function. So in this case, you're looking at that C elevation and there's a blank spot there. Right above the door, which becomes a design challenge, which is exactly what you're focusing on, which I can understand. Now, on the B option, you obviously have it on the left side of that bay because the dining area is there, but you get more windows on the rear. So it's just a little bit of the pros and cons that we deal with, and that from a practical standpoint, we kind of talked ourselves into being able to just provide the one kitchen option for the and high visibility, because that really gives you that strong bay that you see there in A. So that was kind of the discussion around of what to do and how we ended up on what we end up. I can look at what you're asking for because I definitely understand it. I think they would really still want those two options from a purchasing standpoint, because of just the nature of the prospective purchasers and how they live. It would just have to be some kind of feature that deals with that blank spot there. I don't know that higher brick is really going to solve it. You're just going to end up having kind of a blank area there. So maybe we can come up with something else as kind of a
I just was trying to lessen the amount of siding, you know. And to me, you know, I understand the plan issue, but I also think someone wants to buy a home that's attractive looking.
Yeah,
I think unfortunately that to me, that elevation is not hitting the mark. And if everybody loves the center kitchen plan, might be the winner that everyone picks, and then all of a sudden these are all sprinkled throughout the community. It would just pain me not to say anything. So that's
understood.
Why
So
I brought it up.
I guess where I go, we'll come back, and one way or another, it would be for that. If it's just down to that item, we can come back and kind of provide a couple of different variations.
Yeah, I would like to mention something else, a pet peeve, is those windows right next to the doors look into the garage, which means they're always going to be closed shades. Has any thought been given to using high square windows, same shape, but just half of the hung window? So, and it could be an awning, it could be a casement or something like that. And one of my pet peeves is when people have big windows into garages that are always draped or covered, or somehow have a crappy shade on them that's gotten mangled because it's in a garage. It just seems odd to have a garage window right next to your front door. And even the other one in the garage, I know it's trying to align with above, but
we can definitely look at that. And particularly in that like one little recess, I think that would make sense, since it's kind of a different character than the rest.
Yeah, I think you could get away with a high square window there.
Would you be opposed to just eliminating it? using that as a feature, as something different.
I'd have to look at it.
Even like a narrow side light next to the door, eliminate that window
Yeah,
and do
a
a narrow
narrow
side
side
light.
light next to the door would be, and just eliminating the window would work if you have room for that with the wall.
The narrow side light, I'm not sure. I was just going to eliminate it and provide, but I was throwing out there, eliminating and providing its siding and its.
Anyway, that's something else to look at, please.
Okay.
Yeah, conceptually, I think it's close, but you know, it's still. I still think there's some tweaking that needs to happen. Did anyone have any thoughts on my window kind of comment? I feel like it's a pretty substantial change, and I just want to make sure that everyone's kind of aware of it.
Yeah. It doesn't bother me as much as it apparently bothers you, but you know, it's also, can we look back at the regular elevations? I just thought they were so much better than the ones we saw before. I guess it's the one next to that, and so yeah. Next one.
Let me know one.
Down one.
This one?
And then over to the right.
This one.
There we go, that one.
All right.
Thank you.
Yeah, I guess I just picture, you know, sorry, I interrupted to move you around, but if you go up to slide 34, just up 2 real quick. So yeah, if you zoom in on that kind of, you know, feature, I think this rendering, you know, it's very well done and it shows it. You know, if you picture those big panels of glass in the front there versus having that horizontal middle mullion there, because it's going to be a double hung window, you know, having those as nice big, you know, just big casement windows, or even if they're just picture windows that don't open, or maybe they're big picture windows within, you know, a transom above or an awning window below. I just think it renders nicely here because they look like they're fixed windows. I guess is my point. Is if these are actually going to be double hung windows, they're not going to look like that once they're installed. There's going to be a lot thicker mullion joint. There's going to be, the sash is going to be thinner than the verticals. It's not going to read the same way. I guess in person is basically my concern. You know, Lake Ann Fellowship House, they have all the aluminum storefront, so it all reads the same because all the, you know, profiles are that, whether it's a top piece, bottom piece, middle piece, they're all the same. You know, on residential windows, that's not the exact, you know, it's not the case when you're talking about windows. So that's where it's my biggest kind of concern.
Go back to the slide we were looking at before. Yeah, I think it's down below that.
Yeah, the rear.
Oh, I
the
think
rear.
you were up. I think you just need to zoom out or scroll down. No, next slide. Down.
Are you trying to see
There
the
we go.
comparison, or are you seeing?
I'm trying to, I think those floor transoms, as you call them, are kind of weird there, actually. Especially if it's a double hung over an awning or just a fixed.
Yeah, I don't understand
Double
how
hung's
those
gonna
exactly
look
work.
really heavy over a fixed window.
We may want to fatten up that horizontal line between the two.
Well, also the double hung's gonna have an extra frame. Well, I don't know. Is the double
Well,
hung gonna have an extra?
Yeah, and maybe that's the question that we can ask Elena is like, so zoom in on those, staff, just zoom in on like you know, the far left-hand side elevation. And, you know, are the windows in the little bump out, let's call it, right? Are those going to be double hung, or are those all fixed windows, picture windows?
So in this particular drawing and looking at it, our general intent was that the, let's say we're going to focus in on that bay window. It's got 3 windows wide. The 3 floor windows are all fixed. And then sitting on top of that would be 3 hung windows, double, single, depending on the manufacturer kind of thing.
I don't think I've ever seen a double hung window sitting on top of a. I know we have sliders.
We have done it. Yeah, I have.
What is the sill? What does the sill of the window look like when you
So
do that?
they mull the 2 windows together in the factory. Not saying you can't change that condition, but they mull it so that one sits on the other. You can design it differently, but
Gotcha.
it's if from a standpoint of, you know, the maximum amount of glazing, that would be what you want to do. Because I could respond, oh, we can, you know, fatten up that line and all that, but I don't think that I'm listening to you talking. I don't think that's your.
Yeah, no, I mean, more glass the better. You know, I think what would be helpful, you know, would be to, you know, maybe submit a more, you know, on that elevation detail that you have on sheet, whatever it be, to really render what these double hung versus, you know, what does that condition really look like? So slide 40 staff, you know, what are those really going to look like with the true window style that you're now picking? And maybe you decide that none of those need to be open. You know, maybe that's just a family room. You know, I don't know. You know, maybe you guys decide you go back to just a picture with a casement. I don't, or an awning window or a transom window, whatever it be. I don't think it's going to end up looking the way you have it with all those equal profiles. And so that's where I'm.
Yeah, I gotta agree with Michael that it's gonna. So we need to see a detail of it because we want it to look like this, not. You know, because a hung window generally has a heavier frame around it than what you're showing there. So, you know,
yeah, we can. Yep.
We need to look at that, and you know, I know you're probably trying to limit the nut types of windows for cost, but if it's not fixed, you know, you could certainly make that, you know, something in that line. Awning or casement and have fixed around it, you know, so you still get that grid and you still get some operability if you want it, but you know, now that Michael points it out, it does.
We can take a look at that and be a little more specific on how this stuff together. When we were talking about the lines and all that of it, if you look over at Hickory Closure, excuse me, they actually have a fatter line between the floor windows and the windows themselves, and intentionally didn't do it that way just to keep the glazing the maximum. So we can go kind of look at the manufacturer, kind of see what we can do to put it together as their stuff with the actual window.
I guess.
Does anyone else? Go ahead, John.
I guess what we're saying is we really want to see the framing of the window to be minimized. Double hungs don't do that, but the elevations themselves look really great, and we'd like to see the profiles of the framing be pretty simple.
Gotcha.
Does anyone else have any other comments, thoughts? I think just to mention the HVAC, just so we are all on the same page about it. They're going in the rear. The current plan is showing them in the rear yard. That's accurate, correct?
Correct.
And so the current, you know, block of houses, I think the concern is that the noise may travel. I mean, I think there's two ways you could tackle it. They make much more efficient HVAC units nowadays that are much quieter and that have requirements, you know, from a decibel standpoint, that are almost whisper quiet. You know, as a board, you know, we cannot require those, but that may help alleviate some concerns. Or I think it sounds like it takes 10 decibels off as soon as you add a fence. I'm not a big fan of rear fences in townhouses. I like to, especially when they back to wooded areas, because to me, that's why you buy in Reston, so you can be looking out at nature, you know, in your backyard. But if that's kind of a concession for the noise, you know, I think it sounded like you were willing to make those fences just be built essentially, or maybe you build just some sort of community fence that goes along, you know, the property line or something that doesn't impact the neighbors. I don't know. You guys can decide, but it sounds like you're willing to do something there. And so we would just need the design of that specific fence. The current one that's in there, that's kind of a vinyl fence. We don't typically approve any sort of vinyl fences like that. So I would just look into. I can't quite tell if it's a vinyl fence or if it looks vinyl just because of how shiny it is. I would look into a more wood style fence and look at kind of, Cam can show you guys our fence guidelines and send you guys kind of into that direction. But a fence like that typically is not going to be approved in Reston. So does anyone have any other comments? I want to make a motion on, they're looking for a conceptual approval.
I'd like to make a motion that we accept the plans as submitted with refinements to the window details, but with the final submittal.
Okay, there's a motion.
Can I amend that motion to add that they were going to look at the location of the fence? They were going to look at both the arbor area and the pet area to separate those from the adjacent homeowners' entry doors. They were going to look at the style of the mailbox units to make it more in keeping with the contemporary style of the architecture. And they were going to look at the side elevations, especially side elevation C, to make that one more organized and look at other alternatives rather than a garage window in the entry vestibule.
There's an amendment to your motion, John. Do you accept that amendment?
Yes, thank you for being so detailed, Elena.
I would like to add an amendment. I would like to add an amendment as well.
Okay.
And that is to resubmit the landscaping so that it is higher to block the headlights into the adjacent neighborhood. I believe the minimum was asked to be 54 inches. My recollection is correct, but please add that.
Okay. John, do you accept that amendment?
Yes.
Okay. And I'm going to add one more amendment to include a photometric study for the site lighting. In addition to that as well. Do you accept that amendment, John?
Yes.
Okay. So there's a motion. There has been 3 amendments. They've all been accepted by John. Who would like to second the motion?
I'll second.
All right. We have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion on the motion? All right. All those in favor of the motion, say aye.
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 Against, I'm going to vote against at the moment, and then any abstentions. All right, so the motion passes. All right, we'll see you guys in January.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good night.
All right, moving on to Courts Cluster. He's updating some lights.
Michael, I think this one is really your bailiwick. It's in your neighborhood.
Yeah, I know. This is one cluster I haven't lived in on Wainwright. So I've lived in pretty much every other place on Wainwright except here. So is the applicant here? I believe where did I
Yes, the applicant is here. We might want to look at the the director, Reston Association, Cam Adams' AP statement.
Okay, well, let's let the applicant present, and then we will hear from any affected parties. So,
hi, I'm Stephen White. Can you hear me?
Hey, Stephen. Yes, walk us through what you guys are looking to replace some of your site lighting. You could kind of walk us through what you're picking and what's going on.
Yeah, so we have 2 parking lots. We have 6 lights total in the parking lots, and they've started to break. So we went to Kolb Electric and asked them basically for a similar style light that we have now, which is basically kind of a downward facing light. That would just be LED. That's something that would, last a lot longer. And they proposed something else, and then we said no, and then they came back and proposed this one. It's a dimmable. The lights has 3 kind of power settings, I guess. So we can adjust if it's too high or if it's too low. That's the light right there.
Field adjustable light output. Interesting. Okay. I've never heard that you could do a field adjustable. I think that's actually a really nice feature.
Yeah, we replaced one light probably about 10 years ago, and I remember, our cluster is so wooded that the neighbors are never going to see any light because there's 40-year-old pine trees around everything. So it's really just our own neighbors, the people who live in Quartz Cluster. We replaced the light probably about 10 years ago. And we did actually have someone say, the light was too bright and, it's going into my bedroom. So one of the things I wanted was something that, if it's too bright, we can adjust it down. If people think it's not bright enough, we can put it up.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, if that's all you have, then let me just hear from the affected party. I think there's an affected party statement. And then we'll come back to you and ask you any questions. Okay, Stephen?
Sure.
All right, great.
So Cam Adams on behalf of RA Board of Directors. I just wanted to point out the application does not appear to have a photometric study, which is generally a requirement for cluster associations that are submitting for lighting replacements. The lights appear to be in all parking areas across the street from housing. However, the request is for 5,000 Kelvin, which appears high given our dark skies and the fixtures are down lights. We would ask that the cluster confirm the need for 5,000 Kelvin. And we are sympathetic to the expense related to a photometric study, but that generally is a requirement that the DRB does establish. So if the DRB were to review a request that did not have a photometric study, we would like to see some sort of established variance as to the reason why a photometric study is not required.
Yeah, I mean, they mentioned that to me. We are a small cluster. We're only 20 houses. So budget is always a big concern for us for everything. We did ask Kolb Electric basically for something very similar to what we have. As I said, they are adjustable in the field, and it is very dark. That's basically what everybody complains about with the current lights.
Yeah, you guys have some pretty older style shoebox fixtures.
We do.
So one thing that I'm looking at is, it looks like the if you go staff to slide 12, and I looked up this fixture, it has what the photometric is online. The photometric does not need to be super complicated, just for the record. I'm on their website, on RAB's website, and you can have, basically what the light output looks like. It's just a bunch of squiggly circle lines, and then you can just put that right on your map here, just showing where this light is going to be shooting out and where it spills over.
Would we pay somebody to do that?
Say it again.
Would we have to pay somebody to do that, like a professional?
I think if you had somebody, that's capable of using a computer, with Adobe or something like that, you could probably, put it together. Because essentially all we're trying to see is, okay, from what height, your current poles are 10 feet, let's say, in height, and you're going to be mounting this light to it. How far does the light spread? Because that's something that you're going to want to know too. Now, it sounds like you're kind of willing to take the trial and error approach, which if you take the trial and error approach, potentially, let's say, you put the light fixture in and it spreads way too far because the fixture is way too big, let's just say as an example. And then all of a sudden you're having to pay the expense of having to redo the lights because, the light output is too significant for the height of your current poles, for an example. I'm just throwing potential situations out there, right? And so I think that's why we like to request the photometric, which takes into account the height of the light and then how far the spread is of the light at that certain height. Another thing we do recommend for site lighting that it be at 4,000 Kelvin, and that's strictly not a brightness, that's a color temperature. And so this slide is showing, these lights, you can get them in the 4,000 Kelvin range. And so 5,000 is what we kind of recommend for signs and for signage that's on commercial properties. And you probably wouldn't want that style light in your parking lot, that color temperature. And then also, normally houses have about 3,000 Kelvin, 3,500 Kelvin for light fixtures on your house. And those are even warmer light temperature. So I think that's all that Cam is kind of concerned about, is that making sure that this fixture is appropriate for your poles.
Yeah, if you think 4,000 is more common, I asked RA, when we first started this up, like what do people normally install, and didn't get a lot of feedback. So I had to kind of rely on Kolb Electric, what they said. But if you say that 4,000 is typically what people would want for a typical Reston parking lot, then that would be fine.
Because Cam, do we have, you probably don't have access. I'm trying to think off the top of my head from the lighting study that was done. I know we use, I don't think we use 5,000 even at tennis courts, do we? Isn't it only 4,000 at tennis courts? I can't remember.
I believe so, but we have an example site lighting application online for clusters, and I'd be happy to send that to you, Stephen.
Okay.
Yeah, and so I don't want to, I think the fixture you picked, I think is okay. I don't have any issues with that, and I'll defer. We'll go around the room and have the board ask any questions they may have. But that's kind of the thought process behind the photometric study, is just to make sure that everything's been thought through, and you're not just replacing a fixture that potentially could cause more harm than good. So let me go around the room, see if anyone has any questions, and then we'll discuss it a little further. Okay. Sarah, did you have any questions?
No questions. Although, just as a side note, you might be able to contact that manufacturer and see if they could help you with something informal to develop a quick plan.
That's a great idea. Anything to help sell their product, they probably could. And it looks like they have even like a little tool on their website, Stephen, that you may be able to place the lights to see and tell them the height and everything. Brian, did you have any questions?
No questions.
Elena?
No questions.
John?
No questions other than the color temperature of the 5,000 K. So reduce that.
Okay. Mike B?
No, nothing else.
Jim?
No.
Yeah, so all I would, what I think I would recommend is that we maybe, I don't know what your timeline looks like on this, and I'm sure you guys want to get it done as soon as possible, but I do think just deferring it to the next meeting to allow you to get that research a little bit more, making sure you can get the color temperature that we're going to specify, and then also get that rough photometric plan to kind of show, making sure that this, because it is a 24-inch, long fixture. So I want to make sure that is the right, it's going to provide the right throw for your height of your poles. And just to make sure that this is fully compatible. I don't want to drag it out a little bit, but I think it needs just a little bit more study from that regards. But I think it's close. And I think the fixture is design-wise is good. I want to make sure that it's the right one. So with that, I mean, if anyone is against it, I'm going to make a motion to defer the application for further study for the applicant to provide a photometric plan and to revise the color temperature of the light to verify what if he can get the 4,000 Kelvin from the manufacturer.
Question. Can we just do this as a panel decision, or does that have to come back to a full board?
Yeah, Kim, why is this at full board? We can't do this at panel?
We didn't want it to get, we wanted it to be at full board so that if there was an issue related to the panel's decision, it would be expedited in a manner that gets them quicker resolved.
Gotcha. I mean, I'm comfortable with, knowing if they come back with those two things, that this could go back to just a panel board so we could accommodate them faster. Is that something, we're allowed to say, Cam, in our motion?
Yes, you can allow the applicant to come back to a lower level.
So I'll amend my motion to include that the applicant can come back for a panel review once they have those items. So there's a motion, there's an amendment. Does anyone want to second the motion? All right, we have a second from John. Any further discussion? All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any against? Any abstentions? All right, motion passes. Thank you, Stephen.
Hey, Stephen, I put it in the chat, but you might also be able to go to Fairfax County's map website and get a PDF of the site plan of your development. I was just able to do that for ours. So that would, if you don't have a PDF of the whole thing, I just saw that it's printout. That's a helpful tool as well.
Yeah, we don't have a PDF of that.
Yeah, and if you're not, it looks like you have a scan, or I don't know if this is yours or if this is just a copy of what you guys have, but if you can,
because it's a huge thing. It's like 4 feet long.
Yeah, and even if you can just get a rough, picture of it, even like what you have here is fine. If you can just get from the manufacturer that photometric, it'll look like kind of a cloud with multiple rings, and it'll say if you have a 12-foot tall pole, our throw is going to look just like this picture, and then you just need to take that picture and kind of put it on the plan so we can roughly see how far this is throwing the light, making sure that all the poles are necessary, they're spaced out properly, they're not impacting any neighbors or residents, etc. So I think you don't need to go necessarily to a professional, but I think you could find a way to kind of put it all together relatively inexpensively and hopefully for free with the manufacturer.
And I did send you, Stephen, an example application for site lighting, and you have my email address now. So if you have any questions, feel free to reach out.
Okay.
Great, thank you. All right, moving on to resolution 8 and 10 revisions.
Hello.
Adams, take it away.
I'm going to kind of dive in really quick because I want to be conscious of the time. It's 9:30 almost. So
I think we're doing good personally, but
yeah, based on our conversation earlier today, absolutely. So just to kind of reiterate, we're talking about resolution 8, which reviews the design review board's application procedures, and then resolution 10, which reviews the affected party process and procedures. And so we've kind of just summed up the changes that we have incorporated into both resolutions, and we're looking for feedback so that we can continue to move forward with the process. Since the last discussion that we had on resolution 8 specifically on the design review board's process, we haven't made any changes. I believe the consensus was that resolution was pretty well done in terms of the revisions. So we can review it if the DRB has specific questions, or if someone wasn't there during the original review, happy to answer those. But I think it just kind of streamlines the entire application process start to finish with establishing some context for the staff review appeal decisions, going over timeframes for submitting applications, and then submitting documents and supporting information. As you all know, we receive a lot of information, and sometimes it's an hour before the meeting. And so we want to kind of try and curb that, and making sure that applicants and affected parties make sure that they have provided all the documentation that they need to well enough in advance for it to actually be thoroughly reviewed. Resolution 10 related to affected parties. We've kind of talked about this a couple of times now. And one of the concepts that we discussed at the last meeting in September was basically looking at delineating between affected party and interested party. There was a conversation that, you know, there was a desire to have any member who had concerns or questions related to an application, that they should be able to participate in that review of the application. So if we could go to, let's see here, the affected party resolution, and I'm going to look at the red line edit, which is page 9. It kind of starts off with the lawyer stuff at the beginning, and Tony can speak to those things that were done. Just clarifying the appropriate citations for where the board, the DRB, has the authority to do things, and then jumping into the next page, we pulled out definitions. And so the resolution defined affected party. So now we've defined what interested party is. We've also kind of defined what materially impacted is. And let me preface this with saying materially impacted, the definition that you see on the screen, is merely a placeholder. If anyone has a better suggestion on how to define materially impacted, I am all ears. This was much more complex than I actually thought it would be, given that we do this every day and we think we know what materially impacted actually means, but it was a little bit more complex than that. But essentially, we've established what an interested party is, and it's any member of Reston Association who was unable to register as an affected party, but may wish to provide comment on applications reviewed at a panel or full board meeting. And then we kind of established through the affected party registration procedures that staff submitted that any request for affected party must be submitted no less than 2 business days prior to the review of the application, which most meetings are on Tuesdays, which means that all affected party statements need to be provided by Friday, which is when generally we send the notification saying the information's in the Dropbox for you all to review. Additionally, in section 3 of that same section, you have an affected party request must be for each individual application reviewed by the DRB. The DRB will not accept single statements which request affected party status on any future application for specific property. This was established to prevent blanket affected party statements. We've had several members who, I want to be an affected party on every single application that comes from property X, and we want to avoid that. Our intention is that we're contending that the policy really for affected parties is for those that are signatories on the application for acknowledgement. And so those people signing the application really should be the ones that are able to either appeal or not appeal that decision, and then participate in the review in that manner. So hopefully that kind of gets us across the finish line in terms of members kind of being creative and using the affected party process to prevent projects from moving forward if the DRB deems them to be appropriate. Going into the next section, there are just a couple grammatical things that we changed that we felt would be more appropriate, clarifying owner versus member for affected parties, since the deed defines affected party as an owner, not a member, and that clear difference is kind of typically misunderstood. You can be an RA member and not be an RA owner, and so we want to make sure we clarify that part. Then going into the section 3, which is on page, I think, 12 of this section, we have created interested party as its own section. And you will say that looks kind of familiar because we kind of mimicked it from the affected party process. So interested party procedures are interested parties are not required to register in advance of a DRB panel or full board meeting to provide comments, but must notify the DRB secretary of their interest to participate at the start of the review of the DRB application, which in this current format, Zoom, it could be just raising your hand. And it still allows them to participate in the review of the application. If an application has an interested party, the decision of that application may not be appealed at any review level by the interested party. And so again, we want to make sure we differentiate between a registered affected party that signed the application and then also someone who wants to participate but may not have known about the application until the very last minute. And so keeping that conversation going with the people being able to participate regardless of the point that they actually quote unquote registered. We kind of had a conversation last time also related to essentially potentially having a different process for maybe non-residential and residential applications. But based on what we kind of created here, it seemed kind of unnecessary to have a different process. So we're looking for feedback from the DRB, since if we're meeting the DRB's desire to have the interested party and affected party, and we all agree, or you all agree, that the affected party is the one who signs the application, has been notified of the application for cluster-wide notification if it's a cluster application or something to that effect, then there quite frankly isn't a need to have a difference of interested versus affected in non-residential or non-residential properties, because we're still allowing a global participation, just different nuances of what they're called and what the resolution will allow them to do in terms of appealing that decision. And then going into presentations by interested parties, it mimics the same presentation outlined for affected parties, and then leaves it up to the chair of that panel or full board meeting to say, hey, you get more time if they feel like that's their discretion to do so, but still continuing the full board or DRB panel level as the opportunity to participate in those applications. Does anyone have any questions? I know that was a lot to go through.
I do have some comments, mostly editorial. Is now a good time, or?
Sure, if you would prefer, and keep in mind, my goal here is to just get feedback for direction. But if you have editorial things that you think are more appropriate, grammatical, that kind of thing.
No, not grammatical. Well, I'll just spell them. Okay, I think we need to define the number of days as work business days, because if we meet on Tuesday, they could say we got it in by Sunday, and therefore we've met the 2 days.
Already says it's Friday.
So
okay.
So that's one. On the first document, which one's that? First document, resolution 8. 2G2 says that any member wishing to register as an affected party must submit a completed affected party statement form or written statement 7 days prior. And then previously in 2E, we say 2. And then in the next document, we say 2 days. So I just think we need to say 2 everywhere. And then lastly, where's my other big note? Oh, for materially impacted, materially impacted, I don't think that the effect needs to be adverse. It could have any effect, right? You should be able to be pro too, right? And Lastly, on DRB determinations on effective party requests, I think item 4, if the affected party status is denied by a DRB panel and the owner wishes, I think it should probably be the requesting owner. I know that's defined as owner, but if you aren't, you know, they're defined as a owner instead of a member, but if you aren't, if you're just reading this, you'd say which owner wants it, the person who's submitting the application or the person who's requesting to be an affected party. Somehow clarify that. Those are my only comments.
Sure, no, those are good points. So I think 2 business days was in the resolution for submitting, so staff submitted to staff, or reasons for making such a request to staff, submitted to staff. No, that actually is redundant, but no less than 2 business days prior. I think consistent 2 business days or business days references is a good point. And then 2G2 on resolution 8, it says that any member wishing to register as an affected party must submit a completed affected party statement form or written statement 7 days prior to the review of the application, assuming that they were notified. So we'll clarify that part too, because I agree it is confusing and misleading. And then the other things are great points too. So thank you, Elena.
I just wanted to prove I read it.
We believe you. Any other comments?
I've got a bunch of.
Yeah, go ahead, Brian.
Sorry, I've got a bunch of questions on resolution 10, just kind of how it's going to work. So on resolution 10 2A, where this says any person wishing to request registration as an affected party shall provide in writing. So is the application going to be amended so that because you normally check on I want to be an affected party. Is it going to be amended so that the affected party knows they have to submit in writing now?
We've always requested that in writing. Yes, they check a box, but our staff actually, someone submits an application and they check yes, we actually will email them or reach out to them to get a statement. Because as a part of the process, the DRB should be reviewing each request and determining if they are actually an affected party or not. But historically, the DRB has always, if they filled out they've checked yes, they are an affected party, regardless of them actually determining that, unless there's some case by case issue.
Okay, thank you. That makes sense. And then on for the DRB determination on affected party requests, so on 4.2, the full DRB or any DRB panel may deny an affected party request from any owner if it determines blah blah blah. So how does that happen? Does that can happen at in a panel meeting when the application is read, or can it be done before a panel or full board meeting?
I believe that it should be done at a meeting. It gives them an opportunity to be heard, their right to be heard, especially if it's at a panel meeting, because if an affected party's request is denied, they can actually appeal that request denial to the full board.
But if we're in a panel meeting and we deny an affected party, and then we go through and read the application, we might approve the application before they can appeal, right?
No, the review of the application would be delayed until the full DRB determines the affected party's status. So if you look at the next section, I think it's section 4, if an affected party status is denied by a DRB panel, the owner, when the owner wishes to appeal that status decision, the owner must declare this intent at the DRB panel meeting, and then the review of that application in question would then be delayed until after the full DRB makes a determination on their status. So suffice it to say, procedurally, every time there's a registered affected party, the DRB panel or full board should say, yes, you are an affected party because, and if you look at the affected party registration form that staff created, it kind of helps guide the DRB into saying, yes, you're an affected party. No, you're not because of X, Y, and Z. But generally, if someone has registered, the DRB has accepted them as being a registered affected party. There's only one time that I can recall seeing the DRB deny an affected party request, and it was because they submitted a blanket statement and they live nowhere near the actual residential property in which it's being reviewed.
And so how, and then sorry, almost done. When we go to interested party, how would an interested party necessarily know? Because, if you're an affected party, the applicant's going to come by and get your signature. So how would an interested party even find out about?
Where there's a will, there's a way. But I think that's the kind of feedback that we're looking at and trying to determine. Should we be responsible for figuring out how a homeowner is aware of an application? And to me, going and looking at the affected party process that we have now in terms of the resolution, it very clearly is set up that the intent from affected party was that you knew about the application because you were signing the application. And we are now kind of being a little bit more flexible and saying, if you find out about it, maybe, Jane and Joe are talking by the mailbox and they share that, their neighbor is doing something. It still gives them the opportunity to participate in the review of the application. So it's just a little wider net, but still, I guess, meeting the letter of procedure.
Would there be a similar process that the DRB could reject an interested party, similar to how we could do for the affected party?
I don't believe that would be necessary, given that they're not able to appeal the decision of the DRB. It's just merely kind of like a listening session to get feedback, and maybe the DRB will take that feedback into consideration in reviewing the application.
Okay. And then final question. So if there was an interested party but not an affected party, then you couldn't approve it by acclamation. You would still have to run through it to hear their feedback. Right.
You know what, Brian? That's a really good question. I did not think about that. So I think we need to think about that part. I don't necessarily think that we would say the same thing because we're not really. That's something that we need to kind of work through. I think that's a good point.
Yeah, I kind of have the same. So the interested party has always been, to me, an interested party has always been available. We just have never named it, right? It's at least in the past. So when we used to do these meetings in person, there may be 20 people who show up to talk about an application who never, notified RA that they were going to be showing up, and they would have to write down their name, address, and then they would get their 3 minutes to talk, right? I think at that point they then became I don't know if they became an affected party or if they just were, it was basically, like you said, Cam, just a listening session. I don't recall. I wasn't privy, I guess, to that information. I don't know if Tony is still on and listening. I know he said he's always on.
Presumably, Michael, in that particular instance, wouldn't the chair then grant someone from the assembly then the opportunity to speak? I mean, you would have that right as the chair, right?
Well, yeah, so I mean, the way it used to work is that there would be, let's say there was a big redevelopment happening for something, and it got, word got around the community that there was an application at DRB. Then there would be 20 people that would show up, and none of them registered as affected parties. They would just sign. They would sign a sign-in sheet, but I can't remember if that sign-in sheet was saying that they were an affected party or not. Cam, do you know if the old sign-in sheets that we used to have, was that registering as an affected party?
No, from my understanding, it was for member comments, which if they weren't, historically, what we've done is if they've not registered as an affected party in advance of the application being reviewed, they could sign into the meeting and speak during member comments to the application.
And then me as the chair can say, or a panel chair could say, please hold your comments till the actual application.
That's correct.
Okay, all right.
And so to Brian's point, maybe that's a great segue into, for those that are voted by acclamation for panel, you could always open the opportunity to be an interested party during member comments, which happens before you do your vote by acclamation. So then if it's they're an interested party, you would just remove whatever application is on that agenda that has an interested party.
Yeah, okay.
Makes sense.
And so we never, and I know it's an impossible task, but we didn't figure out the notification dilemma.
We did not. And we were hoping that this would be a good way to address not needing to do that, simply because there was just so many different variables that were involved that we didn't want to. This still gives the person an opportunity to participate in some capacity.
Yeah, because I guess, like, so for example, I live right by Vantage Hill here. They've had their giant, yellow signs out from the county for the last, I don't know, 30 days, probably, that are just sitting there on the property notifying that there's a site. There's a rezoning application, right? Personally, I'm tired of looking at them, but that's not up for discussion. But now everybody is aware of that process. Whereas basically before, I guess they were notifying all their neighboring clusters, and I guess that was a requirement of I guess just a requirement for redevelopment that we were saying anybody materially impacted, they needed to notify. Is like, how was that working? Why were they required to do that versus, a homeowner's not required to do that? I'm just curious, is it because it was a whole redevelopment that was judgment of staff that they need to do that?
So really good question. There's actually another resolution. There's resolutions for everything. It's resolution 11 for notification, which really governs redevelopment and any application that requires going to doing a comp plan amendment or a zoning change that then further stipulates the requirements for those types of applications for a wider notification, which then you get that, hey, we're doing this. And so Reston Association does it for all of our application or most of our applications in which we're doing some sort of thing that has to go through a comprehensive plan amendment or change, where we certify, mail it to 3 different addresses, which is the typical requirement, and every homeowner can do that or get 3 signatures. But then we also do if you're within a specified distance from this project, we send a postcard with the information on the application, and they can register as an affected party, or we send a letter, which I think goes back to the conversation we had in September, which is, should there be some kind of further clarification on those applications that are, let's say, your Reston Town Center North or your Vantage Hills or your Lake Ann Fellowship House that has may not necessarily have an amendment to Fairfax County or something like that, but might be minor, but may have a more possible review of having more affected parties. That might be something that we should consider and think about. But to your point, specifically, Resolution 11 kind of goes over the requirements for applications that are for redevelopment or new development. And that's not in the packet because it's I think it's actually pretty good. We've done pretty well with that resolution and making sure that applicants follow it.
Anybody else have any comments, questions? Okay, Cam, do you need us to do anything with this?
Nope, it's actually going to come back in January based on some of the comments that we had, just to clarify those things. Thanks, Elena and Brian and everyone else who sent me things ahead of the meeting. We'll do that and we'll bring it back for January approval to move forward to the February Board Operations Committee for their input and following the process.
Cool. All right. Well, let's move to agenda item M.
Hi, yes. I'm not sure if I'm going to be that quick. Got a couple of things I need to go through, but tonight I'm representing revisions to 9 of the design guidelines and an overview, which provides general information that we're hoping to get before the BOC review committee in the next 2 weeks here. So for our general overview for the first page, just going over authorities, objectives, the design review board, giving our homeowners an idea of what our board does. On page 2, just giving definitions of design guidelines and the purpose of design guidelines, and also going over the 9 categories for the different types of design guidelines. Also going into the purpose of cluster standards. So for page 4, the differences between the design guidelines and cluster standards, and it gives an overview of the application DRB process. Page 5 gives the supporting documentation that one would need to add to their application, and it gives a rundown of all of the different types of review levels. Then it talks about cluster standard application processes on the following pages, along with digital flip books, affected parties, the appeals process, and panel review, just to give an overview, because there never was an overview provided for cluster standards and design guidelines. I'll stop here to see if anyone had any questions or comments just about the overview. No? Going into the revisions. So the first one is for clusters. The revision here was to go over HVAC and heat pump systems. The reason for this revision was newer replacements are larger than the older units, so the suggested revision was that the replacement units be no more than 3 feet higher than the existing equipment. And the other changes in the resolution are just for clarification, nothing substantive. That was the substantive change for this application. I mean, for this design guideline. Also, just changing other to structural for landscaping for freestanding units for HVAC.
Lashonda, do you mind if we go back up to, you're saying, yeah, what you've got highlighted, no more than 3 feet. You're saying it's no more than 3 feet higher than the existing equipment, or no more than 3 feet high, period?
No, it's supposed to be higher.
No more than 3 feet.
Higher than the existing unit. So if you have
that seems a little tall. I mean, I think we need to just clarify that. I think we should more just have a maximum height of, 4 feet or something, because 3 feet higher, I mean, if they have an existing unit that's 3 feet high, then they could go 6 feet high with HVAC equipment. That seems that seems like not the intent of what you're trying to do.
So to clarify the intent, Michael, as Lashonda mentioned, builder installed units are significantly smaller than what we're seeing homeowners requesting right now. I mean, I've seen units like pretty close to 4.5, 5 feet tall, and I've seen some as small as 3 feet tall, 3.5 feet tall. So trying to come up with a better number and concept. If there's a number that you all feel would be appropriate for a no application review, that would be helpful for us to determine what we're looking at. So if you're saying, 4.5 feet, no applications required, no matter if it's mimicking your replacement or a total new replacement, what does that look like? Is that more in line with what you're thinking?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's no application. So for a replacement, if it's the same size, then I think it doesn't need an application. I think same size and location. But to me, if it's going to be any bit bigger, I just think 3 feet is too big of a range to allow it to be just approved. I mean, because somebody may request a 5 foot, a 5 foot high HVAC unit, and I'm going to tell them, no, you can go get one that's smaller. Because that's absurd for residential. I mean,
So hear what you're saying. Our goal is to, because we can't change and add an additional review level. That was what kind of was directed to us. We're looking at making this process a little bit more simplistic and having a guideline that says no applications required if it's similar in size. And we know the industry standard for existing units that are being replaced are not going to be similar in size. That basically takes out any opportunity to not submit an application for an HVAC replacement.
Now, this is just for clusters, or is this also for single family?
We've addressed single family as well, but this one's just for clusters.
What did we do for single family?
It's going to be the exact same.
Yeah, I think we did the same.
I don't know. I think we should say no more than, I don't, without looking up I'm trying to look up a max 5-ton unit. Like if you were going for the Mac Daddy of units, what is the size on it?
I saw someone we were researching like 5 feet high.
But it's also not just tallness. Sometimes, they can get wide as well. I like the note about the acoustics, improved acoustical specifications. I think that's a tricky thing to enforce. Like, I don't know how we tell them to prove that, because as soon as they remove the old one, I mean, how in the world would we ever know? Especially if there's no application required, right? So, do people, I don't think I've even reviewed an application for an HVAC unit before. Do people actually submit them?
So sometimes, yes. Sometimes no. But when it does come to the DRB, and I'll use, if some of you remember Villa Ridge, in which the unit owner replaced their unit, and it was a much larger unit. It was close to the affected party's window. It was taller. And of course, that became problematic for you all to review it, because generally speaking, the concept was the owner did not submit an application because she believed that it was similar in size to her previous unit. And so that ambiguity gets us into trouble, and it becomes a 4 or 5 month process for the DRB to consider, because the guideline wasn't very clear.
Well, but there's still no guideline for condo associations. I mean, that.
Yes, you sold me out. If you
Yeah,
didn't know
okay.
what Villa Ridge was, you wouldn't know that it wasn't a condo, but yeah. The concept is there though.
Yeah, yeah, okay. Yeah, I guess I would just say I think let's research like, what I would rather put a maximum height, because to me this means, let's say I replace it with a 4.5 feet tall unit today, and then I go in a year I go and replace it again because I'm not happy with it, and now I have a residential, commercial style boiler unit, out there that's 10 feet tall because it was only 3 feet taller than the last thing I put in. I just think if we just have a maximum height of 5 feet, I think that's the number that, I think that's still absurdly tall, but I think if that's what the manufacturers are making these days, and it's not impacting, I think the key is that it's going in the exact same location. And if there's existing screening on it, that screening would need to be extended or proven that it's still screening the new unit if there's no application required. So, I know a lot of clusters or a lot of, townhouses, they do have screening around their HVAC units, or it's part of their guidelines. So I would hate to have, approve a unit height and then the person replaces it, and then, the screening is only, 4 feet tall and the unit's 5 feet tall.
Sure, no, that makes sense. So
that
we'll
gets a little
rework it and bring it back.
So that gets a little confusing, but yeah.
Okay. So LaShonda, do you just want to skip through the single family for this one and go to the next one?
Yeah, so we'll go to landscaping tree removals. The landscaping tree removal cluster standards for single family homes are essentially the same for cluster standards. You provided clarification for dead trees under the no application level. Just stating that if you're removing any quantity of a dead or dying tree that has visible rot, fungus, or the root or trunk is damaged or leaning, or bare branches, that's not shown on a DRB approved plan. So we clarified that. That is that's on page 12, clarification of the dead tree. And then we clarified for the live tree on page 13, if you're removing a maximum of 3 trees, and we gave a time period of within 12 months. Just as so that multiple applications cannot be submitted for more than 1 tree application. So say, for instance, within a 12-month period. So that's the reason why we put a 12-month period for live tree removals. Does that make sense? To eliminate multiple applications. And that is both for cluster standards and single family homes for tree removals. Moving down.
So LaShonda, can I ask a question?
Yeah, sure.
On back to the dead tree. Who determines if it's dead? Because I can see this one getting abused because homeowner's just going to say, "Oh, the tree was dead, so I cut it down." And then what are we supposed to do? Like, how do we handle that? I mean, so do they have to get like an arborist report to say it's dead?
We typically ask for arborist statement, for them to send us an arborist statement so we can have it on record, just identifying the dead trees. So that's how that would be.
But to Brian's point, I mean, that's not a condition of them. It says no applications required, so.
But it's still a requirement for homeowners or clusters to reach out to the association to provide this information for us to put in their file.
Right. I'm with you. I just, the intention is to get folks to comply. I mean.
I wonder if it says where documentation should be obtained. I wonder if you just need to change document must exactly. Documentation must be obtained. I don't know. Because otherwise I'm worried we won't.
Period. Right. I mean, that's the thing. I mean, we're looking for compliance here, not, you know, we don't want to make it a suggestion. We want to make it such that, look, we're not suggesting that you have to go through the full process, but you have to document what you're doing so that exactly what Brian just brought up. I mean, Brian, I feel like you and Elena and I have had something like this very recently, didn't we? Where people were like,
Yes.
that tree wasn't dead. Yes, it was. No, it wasn't.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, that happens all the time. And I think another thing, I know it even happened on my own property, is, you know, trees will just fall over in storms, and then you clean it up and you have to get rid of it. And it, you know, like I was walking down Fairway, there's a huge tree that just fell down, and, you know, obviously they had to get it removed and get it, you know, safe. Right. And then I'm sure maybe they took a picture, maybe they reported it, maybe they, you know, there's no process for that. And then, you know, if a POA ever shows up and says, where's that tree? You know, it's a fine line. You know, the people who want to break the rules can break the rules, right? I mean, there's no easy way to do it. So I think this is better. And I think saying must be obtained and kept for your records, I think is maybe better wording, just so people know, hey, we can ask for it if it comes up during a POA, for example. Because I think really, honestly, that's probably when the only time this is going to come up would be during a POA. Or a complaint from you know, your neighbor after you've done it.
Okay. Definitely can change that to must. And what do you think about the 12-month period for the live tree, for removal of live trees? We'll receive applications for live trees within the 12-month period, just to ensure that we're not getting multiple applications back to back. Like, say, for instance, an applicant puts in 3 applications to remove 3 trees. We're trying to prevent that. Are you all fine with that?
But I thought if you're doing 3 trees or less, you don't have to do an application.
So for it's staff reviewable. If you're removing a maximum of 3 trees live within 12, the addition there was the 12-month period. That requires staff reviewed leveled application.
Gotcha.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, are you guys seeing multiple people come in with multiple applications spaced out?
We're just trying to prohibit that. It's happened. We don't want that to become a thing.
Yeah, I guess my thing is that trees within 12 months above the ground if provide items. Trees. But like people come in all the time with projects that, like, let's say they require a tree removal of 5 trees. Is this saying that they can't do that anymore?
They can do it. It would just not be staff level review.
Oh, okay. I see. Okay. This is just for staff. Okay. Yeah. Just kidding. Staff may review your application. Okay. I see that part now. Thank you. Okay.
No problem. And that takes care of proposals for landscaping and trees for a single family and cluster. Moving on to shade structures for single family and clusters. Added no application review for seasonal and temporary structures for single family detached, that no approval. I'm sorry, probably should give you a page number. This is on page 21. So no approval is required for any shade structure that's up between May and September. And then for the design location, added location requirements. So the shade structure must be in the rear backyard. This is for the no application review. We added the requirements for the location and the design, making sure that it's harmonious and it's located in the proper location. Also added the setback requirement of 10 feet from any shared property for the location. These are for year round. So this is going to be for temporary seasonal for no applications, but if the applicant wants to have a structure up year round, the requirement would be for the setback to be 10 feet from any shared property line. And the design portion was changed from relate visually to be compatible with those of the house.
So where does it say that because I see the 2 feet for no application and the 10, where does it say the 10 feet is for a permanent one? I didn't get that.
Actually, Brian, I left it out here. It's supposed to mimic permanent year round here. And I forgot to add it to the single family one. These are supposed to be mimicking each other. So these are for temporary, and this is supposed to be identified as permanent.
So right now, we don't have a provision for seasonal, temporary shade structures. Is that accurate?
So for the review level for shade structures, there is no, we added the no application review level for seasonal and temporary. So no, currently there's none for that. So that was added.
I guess what I worry about is, people leaving a pop-up tent in their backyard from May till September and thinking that's, sticking it on their deck for, it's 4 months, 5 months out of the year. It gets battered, distressed in the weather and the elements. I just,
scroll up.
Why are we offering that even as an option for people, a temporary, are we just thinking like an umbrella?
Just like anything temporary, it could be an umbrella, it could be some sort of tent, as long as it's up between May and September, and it must be removed and stored out of sight between October and April.
But we don't put a size limit. We don't put I think it's a slippery slope to allow that. You'd be shocked at what people may put up in their backyard. They may try to set up an outdoor living room under a pop-up tent with plastic sides and, put a ceiling fan and run extension cords to it.
Well, even for staff reviewable, the dimensions just say that they must be appropriate and harmonious with the size of the yard. So if we want to specify dimensions, we can. But what was there before, they didn't have specifications for temporary structures.
Well, to me, that means if we don't have a guideline for it, it's not allowed.
No. We didn't have a dimension for, we have a design guideline for it, and we have a review level for staff, but it didn't have a dimension. The size and appropriation says its dimensions must be appropriate and harmonious with the size of the rear yard. So we can put a dimension requirement on seasonal or temporary structures if you'd like.
No, I guess my point is we didn't have a guideline for temporary structures before at all. Is that correct?
This design guideline existed. It just didn't address seasonal or temporary. So the shade structures design guideline was here, and it did not address any of the things that LaShonda is mentioning that's in the blue now.
Right. So I guess my point is these shade structures were assumed to be, if you were coming in for an application, you had to submit an application to put up any of these shade structures. But what we're now allowing is potential for temporary structures that could be. I just think it's opening a can of worms that we don't need to open. Why even offer to people to put up a seasonal temporary?
LaShonda, if you could go to page 24, the design guideline that exists now already has from October through April, all elements of the structure must be completely removed and stored out of sight. And the use of a shade structure is restricted to the months of May through September. So all we've done is just move that up to its own section and added the no application review level so that people could have these without having to submit applications for them. Because this would happen during our resale inspections. We would see a canopy that someone had that was beautiful, absolutely gorgeous. They were having fun during the summer, and we'd have to violate them because they didn't submit an application for it. And then you have to get your neighbor's signature, 3 neighbors' signature, just to put a canopy in your backyard to have a summer event if it is in, you know, late September or early October. So it just seemed a little redundant to have to do that. So we added the no application level to address people who wanted it, and it was temporary, and they were going to take it down when they moved, or they were going to take it down after, you know, their party or whatever the situation was. And then if they wanted to leave it up year round, that application could be staff reviewed. I hope that makes a little bit more.
I guess I'm lost because I'm missing what the definition of a shade structure is, I guess, because to me, are you referencing when you're saying a canopy like a pergola, like a wooden pergola that's permanent?
So if we could go up to the next page, there's actually a really good image of what I believe this is referring to, which is in the bottom left-hand corner, which is quite frankly really popular in Reston. And maybe even some sort of like sunshade that is on your deck. If you have a nice little patio and you want to connect that shade from your deck post to your fence post so that you can enjoy your patio without the sun directly beaming on you. That's what I refer to as shade structures. I don't necessarily classify an umbrella as a shade structure, because to me that would be really frivolous. But you know, if you'd like us to define shade structure, we most certainly can, or just as an example, anything that looks like object A and B is classified as a shade structure. We're happy to do that.
Yeah, I guess I and maybe I'm just naive to the situation, but I don't understand what, like, I'm picturing you go to a soccer game or a baseball game, and the parents have popped their little tent up on the side of the field, and people are putting these now as temporary shade structures in their backyard that they can leave for 6 months at a time. That just seems, it seems like we wouldn't normally allow that. Like the picture you're referencing, that looks more of like a thatch kind of tiki hut structure with, built out of more durable materials. And I think that was kind of the intent. The intent of the shade structure thing was always to be a temporary install, I guess, is what they were basically saying. And now you guys are wanting to add a temporary section and a permanent section. But to me, I don't know if there's a need for a permanent section. I don't know if you have some pictures, Cam, of what people have submitted that or have been flagged. I just would be curious to know what's driving this and
yeah,
is it
sure.
really necessary?
If you want, we could just come back with some examples and maybe even a possible definition or something that is clear reference to tents, canopies, etc., like listing them out.
Yeah, perfect.
Happy to do that. And just so you know, we lost Sarah, but we still have quorum.
Okay.
Alrighty, so moving on to page 25, we're going through sheds and storage boxes. Under the no application review level for plastic and storage boxes, we added not including garden or deck boxes less than 4 by 8 by 4 feet. And then we also add.
What are you guys meaning by that? Because now there's two sets of dimensions in there, which is a little.
So this doesn't include a garden box or a deck box that's less than this dimension. And then the storage box is no larger than 30 inches wide by 60 inches long by 30 inches tall.
But what's a deck box or a garden box?
Kim, you want to speak to deck and garden boxes?
So this came about, and I hear what you're saying. It reads a little confusing, but we wanted to make sure that there was a clear difference between what I would classify as your deck box that you may store your outdoor cushions in when it rains, and a garden box for your garden tools and maybe a hose, a garden hose from your plastic storage bins, or your typical storage sheds, because we were getting a lot of it was not clear. And so we wanted to make it very clear what members could do without an application, and not ask us to say, hey, does this box look like it requires an application or no?
Should you split this out then maybe into two different things? Like you have the molded plastic storage box, and then you have another line under it for garden or deck box?
Sure, absolutely. It's a great suggestion.
Okay. Moving down to the next section, for the location requirements, we decreased the dimensions from 20 to 10 feet from the nearest property line for storage boxes located in the rear yard or sheds located in the rear yard. We thought that 20 feet was a bit much. And then we also added freestanding shed and storage boxes. We relocated that from con and panel review to be staff reviewable in this section. Also, under the colors and materials, instead of having paint options, we just stated that the color should be compatible or harmonious with the colors on the house. Two-tone muted colors we're not going to be using anymore. This should have been, it's only supposed to say or compatible or harmonious with the colors on the house instead of the two-tone muted colors. And that is all of the revisions, suggested revisions for storage boxes. Moving on to.
Does anyone have any questions on that? Because I think that was one of the things that we wanted to make sure you all saw and were clear on. The 10-foot requirement is one of the things that keeps coming up. Sometimes members in single-family detached homes can't do storage sheds, specifically because they don't have that 10 feet or the 20 feet. And so we're reducing it to 10 so that staff can still review those types of requests and they're not coming to a panel. And then also the color part, as it stands right now, staff can't review two-tone storage sheds. So if someone has a white shed and a brown trim, staff can't review it. So that's why we're making sure that we clarify that it's compatible and harmonious, and asking that you give us the ability to review those types of requests as long as they meet that requirement.
Sorry, I was muted. I said, I think that makes sense. 10 feet is reasonable, and two-tone is, I don't know why that should be an issue. As long as the two tones aren't pink and purple, we're okay.
Got it.
No pink and purple. Moving down to page 28 for signs. We added a usage timeline section requiring political signs to be placed no sooner than 30 days prior to the election and be taken down 1 week after. We moved the con and panel review underneath the immediate removal and added real estate signs. Page 25. And the following mimics exactly the cluster standard. So the next one is just the signs for cluster standard, for single family homes. So does anyone have any questions about signs, about the usage timeline of 30 days prior and remove 1 day, 1 week after? Timeline, okay. And then lastly would be window replacements and additions. So for window replacements for clusters, this is page 34. Replacement partial was relocated to no application needed because what is being proposed is if an applicant submits an application for a specific manufacturer or a style that conforms with the DRB approved, the DRB approved cluster standard for replacements or your cluster, then it would be good to go. So we just relocated that from staff review level to no application review level. And then it for the windows for single family window replacements on page 40, replacement windows. We changed the individual windows to partial windows to give the ability to approve more than one window with no application if the windows are identical. And for a staff reviewable, we also changed the individual to a partial window replacement for unidentical window replacements. And this would be something such as like if an applicant is asking for like a picture window with no grids, and then the surrounding windows would have grids, that this could be staff reviewable as long as it's in a the location is architecturally appropriate. And that is the last proposed revision. Questions?
I don't think we don't see any questions yet, but I think Brian had a point earlier in the meeting about design guidelines for condos. We're happy to establish that and look at that. I think in some situations it's easy to just do like a copy paste situation for our existing guidelines and just slap condo on it. And then have you all look at it to see if there's some changes that you all would like to see in terms of specific condo nuances that might be present. So like the air conditionings might be one, or if there's something specific related to an element that is condo specific. But the thing about condo design guidelines is not all elements are elements that are owned by the unit owner. Sometimes they're owned by the condo association. And so we'll need to be mindful of ensuring that the language mimics is generalized. Because we would expect the condo association board to follow the same rules that we would expect condominium unit owners to follow as well. So if that's something that you're interested in, which I clearly would suggest, we're happy to delve into that and make that a 2023 goal.
I think it could be helpful just because, you know, we talked about Vantage Hill, if they become a condo association, whatever that means, you know, then they're going to have some exterior maintenance, you know, whatever. They're still going to have guidelines that need to be applied to their buildings, right? So.
Yep. Is there anything else? We clearly had a list of things that we were going to work on, the overview, and just so you know, working through it in our heads, our whole goal is to eventually combine all of the design guidelines into one document, which would make the general overview a little bit more illustrative in terms of setting up what precedes it, so that members have more of a bite of what this actually means, because they just have it piecemeal now. You say, oh, I live in a cluster. We just send you the cluster guidelines, and it's one guideline. And they have to basically look at it and say, okay, I'm looking for my window guideline. Okay, great. But there's no explanation in terms of what does cluster standard mean? What does that look like? What's the process? And so we're just trying to make sure that it's all cohesive in one document that we can still parse out and separate if needed, but it just is helpful to have that all in one, housed in one location. And so we'll continue to work through the suggestions and feedback that you presented tonight. LaShonda did a fantastic job in getting these all set up for us. And so we'll be back in January. That the schedule that you see now is not the schedule that we'll be following. We were a little hopeful to have this done earlier, but we appreciate the time that you all have given to give us feedback. And if you do have any other feedback, feel free to email it to us. And then anything else that you might want to see as a DRB member or a member in general, you guys are still members, what you would like to see in terms of us addressing or the DRB addressing for a design guideline.
I agree. Thank you, LaShonda. And I agree. I think the overview was a nice addition. I think it'll help homeowners a lot. So thank you.
No problem.
All right, LaShonda, do you want to close us out with the calendar?
Yes, lastly, we just have the DRB board calendar for 2023. If anyone has any questions or has any discrepancies with any of the dates, just let me know. This is what we have for now.
So generally, every board meeting in April or May, I can't remember which one, you all will elect your new vice chairs and the chair of the DRB. So that will be changed in April. But if for any reason there's questions on, you know, your profession has changed or, you know, work commitments have changed and you need to change your panel meeting or something like that, that's always flexible. It has been in the past. So this is just kind of earmarking and planning ahead to make sure that you all have what we have planned and keeping in consideration some of the holidays, religious holidays included. I think we've kind of made sure we have addressed, and then also who has what meeting, who has what con, and what staff members assigned to it. And Michael, I don't know if you mentioned this or not, but our favorite, one of our favorite DRB members, Dan Galindo, has been appointed as the Director of Planning and Zoning for Loudoun County. And so he unfortunately will not be able to continue on as a DRB member. And so we will have a vacant position open after December. And so we'll be looking to fill that position. So Dan Galindo may not necessarily be he won't be on the green panel, and he won't be the vice chair of that panel. So we'll need to make those adjustments after December.
Cam, you guys had done so good to fill out our board.
Who are you telling? It was very, great for Dan, fantastic, very happy for him. But it will be a little bit challenging to find another design professional, but we're up for the challenge.
Yeah. And yeah, so I think the calendar looks good. I think if everybody could just take a look at it, give feedback, via email. I think it's obviously, I don't think this far in advance, so I'm sure I have a conflict. I have no idea now though, but I'm sure I will. And I'll get with my significant other to finally make sure that this looks good, but I'm sure it's fine. What's the status of our, LaShonda, have you got enough feedback on our social meetup plan?
Yeah, it looks like everyone is available on December the 12th. So that seems like the day.
December 12th. Okay. Well, so people put that in your calendar. Don't get double booked. Would love to meet everybody. Putting in that's a Monday. So, and then do you guys have anything else? Because I just have one comment that I wanted to make, and it's just it's more of a general member comment. So I was recently looking to put together an application for my house, and I went, just like every other member I'm sure does, is Google Reston Design Review Board application. I Google it, I go to the Reston website for Design Review Board, and I get to this website, and I, for the life of me, can't find the application. And I click this link that says to access applications, agendas, meetings, videos, and more, click here. I click here, it puts me into a Dropbox link. There's no application in sight. It took me forever to actually find the application, and I'm the dang chair of the DRB. So I don't know if there's a way we can fix what showing up first on Google, if there's a way we can at least put a link to just the main application on that DRB page that I'm looking at right now that says Design Review Board Overview, Description, Responsibilities, Composition. But it took me longer than 5 minutes to find the actual application. So I feel like there's something we got to fix there. Just from a website standpoint, just for the record.
Sure. We can most certainly try to do that. As you know, the website that you see now is actually a temporary website, and it's been the temporary website for 2 years.
Yeah. That's like why we still have a road called Temporary Road, Cam. There's been temporary road for 25 years. So
yeah,
longer than that.
We would most certainly like to improve that and have like a forms section for the entire organization. And I think right now we are hopeful that a new website is coming in 2023. But if you could, because this is being recorded and live streamed, Anna Rosa, could you pull up the Reston website?
Yes, I can do that.
It's like I'm just on the reston.org/design-review-board.
Totally. And
which is where I would think the application would be.
Here we are.
It's not.
We can't see your screen. You have to stop sharing and reshare. Sorry. So the section that you're in is going to just take you to our governance folder, which is just going to show you where the DRB application is. But you really want to be under property owners resources. And that's going to take you to all of those things. And what we can do, Michael, is just add DRB application, and it will just link it straight to the DRB application.
Yeah, and just something, because that's just what happens when I went to Google and just put in that I was looking for the application specifically, and it takes me to that page. And I'm like, I know what the application looks like, and none of these things are the application. So I'm like,
do you know why it takes you to DRB application?
Say it again.
Do you know why it takes you there? It's because of the prospective volunteer application.
Gotcha. Yeah, I saw that as a link. So even
Yeah.
if you just put right there, a link right below that that says, homeowner application here.
Sure.
Yeah, it's not easy. I agree. I've done the same thing. And it is under covenants and design review boards frequently asked questions, and it says design review process and what should be included with my application. And then it says, click here to access the DRB application. But it took me a long time to find that out.
Yeah, we definitely have a long way to go. Let's say it that way. So appreciate the feedback, but we'll try and find some more creative ways to get it more. And maybe there's something our communications team can do to make sure that when someone Google searches something, it can be more readily accessible to what is actually more appropriate to what they're searching. I don't know if that's a thing or not, but
It is. I know because I've done it for other things.
fantastic. We'll make
It's at
sure-
a cost. But it is a thing.
Yeah. So I just wanted to bring that up, just it was something, just to help our members out and myself out personally.
Next
So,
time, Michael, just do that during member comments.
yeah, I should. All right. Well, I don't think we have anything else, staff. I appreciate all your time and all the hard work that goes into all those updates. I know it's not fun to do those tedious tasks and then we pick them apart, but we do appreciate it. And it's looking good. Does anyone want to make a motion?
Oh, God, yes. I make a motion. to adjourn.
All right, there's a motion. I'll second the motion. All in favor, say aye.
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 Night, everybody. Thanks. Steph.
Awesome. Thank you. See you all
Thanks,
in
everybody. Have a good night.
See you. Good night.
See ya.